3. Oh, I fucked this up already. Okay, here you go. Try again. 5, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live. How we doing today? What's going on? GandoraOlap. How's it going, man? Long time no see. How do you like the 890 jump? Was it good? Was it good to you?
Very much enjoy spending time in though because it supports a lot of activities. It has a lot of rooms.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, obviously, because we're in it, and it was a good decision, I think. So Gandora, what's it like? How you doing? How's like COVID? How's life? What's going on in your world? You're in Oregon, right?
Yeah, I'm in Oregon. So things have been different. different. So we ended up pulling our kids out of school a couple weeks early. Like as soon as the news hit, given my background in the military and everything else, I just decided, hey, this is a little bit more serious than I think people are letting on. So I think in February, me and my wife took our kids out of school. So they have been at home while I'm trying to stream full time and do, freelance software development. For how many months has it been? Like coming up on 3 months now. So it for me personally, the thing was I wasn't expecting to learn how to homeschool anytime soon. So that's been a challenge for sure. I think it's starting to become a little bit of a new normal for everyone, which is a little disconcerting, right?
Yeah,
But
it's like that here, big time.
but at first it was really difficult to explain to the kids why they couldn't spend time with their friends and why my 6-year-old who just turned 7 this last weekend couldn't have a birthday party and all that kind of stuff. But I think we've been able to make the best of it, and at least I'm getting to spend more time with the kids. So that's nice at least. Obviously, I'm looking forward to a little less only my family, but I feel pretty lucky to have a family that already kind of was used to the idea of working from home and spending a lot of time with each other. So that wasn't super difficult for us. It's just we've seen a little more of the kids in particular because we had been taking advantage of the fact that they were at school so we could have dates and stuff. And so what about you? How have you been handling the whole quarantine thing? Where are you at, by the way,
I'm in
Sequoia?
Victoria, BC, so just on the other side of the pond
Okay.
there, a little bit of a pond. I found it interesting that you said that you don't know if you like the fact that if people are kind of getting used to it, because I've been noticing that a lot lately here. It's like people are just kind of accepting it, tolerating it.
It's good that we're learning to cope with it, but I'm concerned about the long-term implications.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's going to be good. I think a lot of what's happening is we're kind of going back to the way things were before the car,
Interesting.
right? If you think about it.
Yeah.
So a lot more focus on our local communities, a lot more focus on doing things from home, which actually was totally normal before the car was invented. So, and it's clearly a lot better for the environment and everything. I don't know that economically the world is at all ready for it. I think that it's something we need to do if we're going to keep on having babies as a species,
That's true. Yeah.
right? But I'm concerned as someone who runs a business, several businesses, and is trying to survive in this economy on how much of an impact this will have on me, my fellow colleagues like yourself, other like the whole broad community is going to be pretty heavily impacted if we're suddenly changing the way we live longer term. um but it's also concerning if we were to immediately go back to these old habits once we've figured out that they're not necessary too. So,
That's true.
right, it's it's hard to really say what would be a better option. Obviously, it would be more convenient for us if we could just say, cool, that was a really weird couple months, guys, everyone back to everything. But I feel like a lot of people are starting to realize that there were things that we were ignoring at home that maybe we should have been paying more attention to. And for me personally, I had already come to that revelation a long time ago. That's why I decided to become a full-time streamer and to work from home pretty well exclusively, just because my experiences in the military and corporate America led me to the point I am today, where I'm not really willing to work in an office, even
Yeah.
though I'm fully qualified to do so.
So yeah, I'm also in the software world too, which is cool. So it's lots of software people I find in Star Citizen, and I like it because I learn a lot. To be completely selfish about it, I get to soak up a lot of people's good um, skills and stuff like that. So what, you work in like JavaScript or
I
coding?
mostly do Python and Angular
Oh, nice.
the last couple of years. So
Okay.
I develop web applications. I run a company called Date Palm Media, and I have a small team of developers. And for me, my focus niche is finding small to medium sized companies that need to automate their business practices.
Yeah,
And so that's the kind of development work I look for. And as
that's
an
hard.
experience, yeah, as an experienced project manager, and I've worked in manufacturing, I was in the
Oh, nice.
military. So I have a lot of experience like writing technical orders from the military and doing like rigid process type stuff, and I have a lot of leadership experience. So I find I really enjoy finding a client who really needs to automate the work that they're doing already. Like, let's say that they've got a process they've been doing on paper or in Excel, and it's just not scaling. Then I go through and I learn exactly how they run their business, usually like manufacturing or something like that. Like distribution and manufacturing work really well with my process. Um, and once I know how you run your business and how you communicate to your employees, I'll develop a custom web application that will automate everything about the job of managing those orders and that process, so that you can scale the business up. Um, it's very niche, but like I got tired of when I was working at like I would work at a manufacturing place, and they would just try and pigeonhole a really good process into some kind of off the shelf software.
Yeah, I know
And a
that
lot
one.
of them would go out of business,
Yep.
spending so much money trying to change what was a functional process.
Isn't that crazy? And you say something to them like, "Oh, you should just build this from scratch because it would, be half the price, half the cost, and it would be like a modern system, instead of
Yeah, exactly.
duct tape and super glue."
It can actually be cheaper to build it from scratch for
100%.
these
Yeah,
folks.
but
And
there's like a
so
stigma out there. You know what I mean?
and it's also, the issue is like, if you're talking to the wrong kind of person, they would rather pay $1 million to just grab something off the shelf that has a brand name recognition than to pay 100K to a small development team to knock it out of the park and create something specific. But for them to be able to do the like custom piece, they have to be willing to participate in the development process.
That's
And
true.
that
That's
is something that, first of all, you need someone like me who can actually communicate with you,
Are
but you
you
also have to
more of
be.
a TDD guy or are you more of a Scrum guy?
I
I'm not
am
judging.
Kanban agile.
Okay.
It's my favorite.
Okay.
So I have a custom kind of like agile process. Scrum bothers me because
I
it
like
has.
Scrum, by the way. Just full disclosure. That's what I mean. Judgment's gonna drop.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
let's
No, no
let's
worries.
get this on the table.
Yeah, yeah. So for me personally, I've done a lot of Scrum, I've done a lot of Kanban. As someone with a manufacturing background and I like to manage things so that I can deliver anytime. So for continuous delivery, Kanban made more sense to me than Scrum. So basically, the way I've tried to set things up is that when a ticket's done, it's done. It's not waiting on any other tickets, right? Once it's allowed to be merged into the master branch and it's been tested, then a customer could say, let's deploy that, right? And so for the way I manage teams, it works better, but I also manage like exclusively distributed teams. So like the concept of having to have these extra meetings or those other pieces was problematic. There's also the issue of QA kind of being caught in this weird loop where they're waiting for everything to be done and they're not really testing until the end of the Scrum cycle. And I know you can mitigate those, but basically by taking some of these Kanban principles and building them into your Scrum cycle.
Now, I compared TDD originally because I look at TDD and Scrum as like two of these agile methodologies that have rigid rules. It's like if you do this, this is a part of TDD. If you do this, this is a part of Scrum. But Kanban I always understood as being straight in the middle. You know, it's the most loosey goosey thing out there.
I love loosey goosey.
You love loosey goosey.
Yeah, I've done about that. So TDD, can you give me what that stands for?
It's actually really interesting. So like okay, so like I prefer the role of a scrum master, but usually I get roped into being a product owner because they say I have sales skills. But anyways, um so in the scrum world, you got the product owner that deals with the customer, right? But in the TDD world, the customer works directly with the developers. In fact, in pure TDD, they say the customer should be sitting at the desk with the developers.
Okay.
Pretty big difference if you think about it. There's a whole bunch of other rules like around like continuous integration and acceptance testing and stuff like that as well, but some of that stuff's a bit over my head.
Well, so most of those things are still in place when I run a Kanban shop, right? And I've run for multiple big corporations Scrum. The big problem that I've found with Scrum usually, and it's one of the reasons that folks kind of like it too, is that it has a lot of wasted time. Uh, but that does help people like kind of be like the developers, they crunch to get things out in the beginning, and then they're kind of like lay back, chill out while they wait for testing to happen,
Yeah.
right? And then the testers are waiting, and then they crunch out the testing at the end. The problem is that it makes both groups uncomfortable outside of very specific
That's
personalities.
100% true. You know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went with Kanban, and I still keep the very rigid requirements that you experience in Scrum, but I like to know that there's always stuff for QA to test and there's always stuff for development to develop. And I'm okay with giving people breaks, like, but the way that I work already is my developers, if they need to take time off, they just tell me and then they take time off and then someone else picks up the task that needs to get done. It's not a big deal, right? And so when someone wants to work, I want them to be able to work as long as we have work authorized to be done. And that that wasn't able to be done before. It was like there was usually, oh, we're waiting on planning or approval for this. We got to wait till 2 weeks from now when the planning meeting happens for you to have anything else. So just go help with testing, right? And they'll be like, but I wrote code for all of those things, or I guess you can't test, right? Because you can't have people test the stuff they coded. We've all seen where that goes.
Yeah.
Um,
That's funny. True.
there you go. And
I,
so,
Go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
that's that's why I kind of fell on that. But I'm comfortable with all the different methodologies, and I understand that when we get to a point where we have a certain number of employees, going to Scrum is easier to manage. But
That's true.
I think it's because of the fact that we have a culture that requires formal meetings at very specific times in order to function. Um, and so I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think that it's kind of built into the way humans are, the same way our shows work better if we have a very regular routine,
Yeah.
right? And so being too loosey goosey about things does lead to negative results in the end.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's the most of the companies that I've ever worked with. They're kind of afraid or adverse to employ strict
yeah,
regulations around project management. Like management itself is a bad word, right?
yeah.
So
I unfortunately, but they once you have experienced being on a team that doesn't have a good manager and you switch over to being on a team that has a solid manager, you realize it is important. Does that make sense?
it
Right?
makes
Like,
sense. Yeah.
right? Like once you've seen both sides, I okay, so what you experience when you become a manager is something they call imposter syndrome. Okay. And that is basically you feel like you're not really qualified or you shouldn't have authority when you're first experiencing it. And until you see what happens when you're not there, it's hard to appreciate whether or not you're having an actual impact. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
And so most most of the higher tier types of work, um, you tend to, when you're initially jumping into it, naturally have an imposter syndrome. But I think, particularly for management type roles of any kind, we spend most of our early careers basically blaming everything on management culturally. So once you get to that point, you feel really shitty, right? Like you're like, oh no, I'm that guy now, right? And you start to see yourself doing things that you said, oh, I would never do that if I was a manager. And then you sit there late at night, just like really freaking out, uh, and being like, oh man, there's got to be an alternative. There's got to be an alternative, and you end up doing the same thing that you berated your boss for 10 years ago, right? Because you realize that actually is the best option you can think of. And that can be really challenging. I mean, have you ever had anything like that in your career?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
for sure, man. But you know
It's a
what?
it's a weird feeling.
Well, well, here's the thing. Like in the back of my mind, okay, first off, I think Scrum is like a religion. And to get
You're not wrong. Go on.
someone out of that mindset is impossible. And that's how I am. I'm a zealous, overly zealous Scrum person. And I say I'm not a manager. I'm not a part of the that what you're describing. And I'll tell you this is why I feel this way because I took this project management course. Like I don't know, in Canada we call it PMI, Project Management Institute. It's like
Yeah.
I mean I know you guys have it in the States too, but it might be something different. But like I took a 1 year course at that at a university, and it's just all nonsense. Like it's just like marketing, internal marketing. And that's what managers are, quote unquote, right? So in Scrum, Scrum
Mm.
Master is the pizza guy. He's the guy who orders pizza for people, and I want that job.
I So I really had an issue with Scrum's perspective of a Scrum Master versus the actual project manager. And I've had some difficult experiences trying to motivate groups to actually get things done because of the way that they label things as you're not a manager, right? And I think it works for some group personalities, but it requires that basically your development team has a very strong technical lead in the group who essentially acts as a liaison manager. And if you don't have that, then your scrum master essentially has to step up to the plate and behave as a manager. The problem is you're straddling this weird fine line where you're being taught the religion of scrum that says you don't have a manager, right? And this creates conflict in a lot of organizations that I've tried to help. And for me, I'm especially with my military background and all of my experiences in life, I'm okay with the concept of sometimes there's command and control. And sometimes we have to say, we're doing this, right? And that's where I have a difficult time sometimes with the concept of a scrum master as it is laid out. Does that
I
make
don't
sense?
think a scrum master needs to be this way though. That's the thing. I don't think they ever need to step up and be that, because it should be all about, it's all about socialism. Like, you want to talk about being in the military, and this might be incompatible with that way of thinking, but it's all about just everyone's on the same team, and everyone has their own skills. Everyone does what they love to do. You have to let the process manage the people. You can't be an individual managing people.
And that's okay, but it is not compatible with every organization.
Well, here's the thing. It's a religion. That's why I say it's a religion, because it legit is. Like, either they're going to adopt the religion or they're not.
Yeah.
They
I
need to
think the
like
big thing is you have to adopt the process fully or not at all.
100%.
And that is the real difficult part, because that is the problem with not having command and control in some of these types of organizations, because if you move from waterfall and a very command and control structure, and you do not have the kind of leadership skills and motivations inside your development team that are required for them to self lead, and you just tell them, here is Scrum Agile, do it, they will fail.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is like, if you go half in on Scrum, it'll fail. You have to
Yeah.
go, it's either all in or not. And like, I've been involved with so many corporations that are just like, oh, we're going to do our own version of Scrum. And it never works. It always, like, after 6 months, just abandoned. And
I
I worry
told
about that with CIG.
I told you I always spell your name wrong. You gotta realize you spelled it wrong. I
That's
even talked about this before. Ta-da! There we go. We did it.
I
Is that
hope
better?
to I hope to take on these projects again in the future. It is a passion of mine, and like, you most likely have way more experience than I do. So like, you've learned some lessons, and that's why you choose the Kanban route. And a lot of places choose Kanban. So like, I hope to take on another project like this again
It'd
in the
be
future.
nice. I recommend trying it on a very small scale just to see the difference, right? But I think there are certain projects that work really well with Scrum, and projects and team compositions, right? And then there's others that Kanban is able to be really effective at. And it just depends upon what kind of release cycle you're looking for, what kind of development interaction you want to have, and 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 some of the requirements you have at the end, right? So for me, the flexibility for a client to tell me that they need a release this weekend, as opposed to me telling them it's going to be in 2 or 3 weeks, is why I've opted primarily to go in the other direction. Um,
So wait, what
but
does that mean? You mean that with
so
Kanban you can guarantee a time release like that?
yeah, yeah, because every time I move, the way that I move tickets into the main branch, they've already been fully tested and they're ready to deploy.
Mm.
Because I will say, here's an individual feature, and we never muddy up the main branch. And so only when development has been tested with that feature in place is it allowed to merge over. And we know that's already been tested, and then we can test it over on the staging, and then staging basically every day can be ready for a deployment, and that's called continuous deployment. Or so there's continuous integration, which means that you're testing every time a feature gets done. And then you've got continuous deployment, which means that basically you can deploy changes as you go. And Scrum is fundamentally incompatible with that. Whereas Kanban takes all of the things that I personally loved about the religion of Scrum and introduces the ability to separate individual features from a standard release and meeting cycle. But it can be a little bit difficult to manage for a project manager or a product owner if they don't understand the bottom and the top of the cycle, right? And so what I find I do is I spend a lot of time saying, hey, the people from QA, I want to talk with them in the morning and be like, hey, I've got 7 tickets that need tested. You need to clean up the development branch. Or I might have to say, hey, nothing can get merged right now. You can keep on working in your feature branches. We need to keep this clean. Basically, when it comes to if we get a request to do a very quick push, and we have a lot of things in development, my main job really on a daily basis is to make sure we have very little untested stuff in development, so that if we had to do a deployment to master, that we would be able to do a quick cutoff and then finish, a couple tests, which will be one day. And basically within 1 to 2 days, you can generally do a safe production release. Now, this ties in for me. The reason I love Star Citizen so much is because I'm basically participating in this process
Totally.
in my favorite video game. Um, and I think that's also why we see a lot of software experts gravitating to Star Citizen, because it's like we feel like we're contributing to creating this beautiful sci-fi world that we want to live in
It's
on
like
our off
open
time.
source project management.
Yeah, basically, or open source testing.
Testing project management. Yeah.
We pay large quantities of money to test our favorite game. But yeah, I definitely found that has had a big impact on the way that I play the game and why I enjoy it. For context on what brought me to the point where I started playing Star Citizen is I started my play group. I run a chill play group. We've got like 750 people now. Basically, we started in Orbis Online. It's a Orbis VR. It's a VR MMO. It is the reason I had to start the play group, because I wanted to have a more relaxed environment that I could play with. But I was pretty hardcore into the game, and I knew I wanted to create a fellowship, is what they were called there. And I've had experiences with WoW guilds and things like that, where basically if you had a family or a job, you would get kicked out of the guild. And
Wow.
and so for me, I needed to create something that, like, even if some of our like mid-level leadership had to take a break for a couple months, it wasn't going to be a big deal. I didn't want to ever put people into a situation where they felt like they had to not take care of their real lives because they were worried about losing their friends. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I've never heard of that before. That's crazy.
I've experienced it a fair amount. And so really for me, it was very, very important that I created an atmosphere where people felt comfortable walking away and knowing that if they came back, they would be welcomed back into the community, regardless of how long they had to be away. And that the only thing we might do is check in with them to make sure they're okay. And that, if they needed help, that we provided it. And so eventually Orbis VR got to a point where they were targeting a different demographic. They stopped updating the platform for like 7 months. During that time period, I jumped back into Elite Dangerous, which is what had originally convinced me to get VR in the first place. If you've never played Elite Dangerous in virtual reality, do it. It's an amazing experience. Outside of virtual reality, you get to a point, especially if you've played Star Citizen, where you run out of things to do fairly quickly. But I got 3.5 years of really solid fun out of Elite Dangerous. And I basically went through and started getting all of my previous fellowship mates to play in Elite Dangerous, but I kept on encountering significant difficulties in doing larger group activities. Anything above 4 people in Elite Dangerous, it just doesn't work really well. And then I kept on encountering this problem where basically people come in and they see your large Corvette and you don't see them for 3 months because they just go and start grinding out money because they want that same ship.
Mm.
And because I can't share that ship with them, I can't let them even test fly it or anything. They just get like, envious of the things that you've acquired over 3.5 years. And they'll lose sleep until they manage to acquire it. But by that point, they're totally burnt out and they don't want to play with you anymore. And luckily, one of my viewers at the time suggested Star Citizen during a free flight. I finally said, okay, cool. I'm willing to make the leap. I'll give it a try. And because I had a mentor there, I didn't rage quit because something we talk about often is how difficult the initial user experience is. Trying to learn, just how to get out of the hab, how to get into your ship, how to fly. Because it kind of sets you loose. You're just like, clearly you were a qualified pilot. Unfortunately, you were in a coma and you lost all your memories. But you already have your license, so go ahead. And what made Star Citizen so amazing for me was the ability to let people borrow my ships, to steal people's ships,
Yeah.
and then to do this multiplayer content where I could have a whole crew of 8 to 20 people on one spaceship was just like that's what really sealed the deal for me. And that's how CIG got my wallet. What was it for you?
Sorry, what for me?
What really brought you into the fold of Star Citizen personally? Like, what made that a thing for
Um, I don't know. I just feel like I've kind of always been here. Because
you?
I'm from the universe of Ultima, right? Like,
Okay.
the Ultima series by Origin. You heard of that before?
The what?
Ultima series by Origin. Origin, the corporation that Chris Roberts was a part of back in the 80s.
I've heard of it. I never actually played it.
Okay, so they're a game company that did a bunch of titles in the 80s. One of their bigger ones was the Ultima series. There was like how many? 15 Ultima games.
Okay.
And Chris Roberts, I think, was involved with 4 and 5, if I'm not mistaken. So, I just Origin was this company that always did stuff that nobody else was doing. They pushed the boundaries. They always offered a kind of a new experience and immersion. And I don't know. It just kind of feels like a family. I don't
So
know.
so you backed really early on in the process then?
No, because in 2012 and 2013, I had the biggest financial crisis of my life, up to and including a software project that went bad. So,
Gotcha.
so
It
my
was
account says
Yeah,
2016 on it.
gotcha. It was on my radar when it first came out, and actually,
Yeah.
like Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen were up for backing around the same time. So I was similarly in financial distress at that time. I was finishing up college in electrical engineering. So around the time it was being discussed, it was my colleagues in college were talking it up. Um, and I looked it up and I saw that their model was selling spaceships, but I also did some research and realized that they didn't have a fully finished development team and they didn't have like an actual published proper roadmap for how they were going to achieve it. And as a software engineer, I looked at Elite Dangerous and I said, Elite Dangerous is going to get to the finish line first.
It's true.
So I backed them at that time. It was a much smaller price tag. So for me, as someone who really, really, really likes spaceships, I knew that it was going to be risky. And I correctly assessed my personality that I would buy a lot of spaceships. Okay. I don't just have a top hat here in real life. I have one in game and I am ashamed to wear it, but I did earn it by making myself rich in game and poor in real life. Um,
Yeah,
I
same.
I very much love the game and I'm happy to have supported Star Citizen as much as I have because of how much I love the game and the community. But I think I made the right call for myself while I was trying to finish college. just having gotten out of the military and going through layoffs from my first engineering job, right? Um, it's I was not in a position where I could get into it, right? Like I wasn't in a position where I could have gotten into Bitcoin. It was the
Mm.
same time frame.
It was the
I
same time frame, yeah.
more so, I more so than Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen. I wish I had bought $100 of Bitcoin when they were 10 cents.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we wouldn't be having this conversation though. So I'm glad we're
I
having this.
hope we would be actually. I think that'd
I
be
don't know.
pretty
I would have
cool.
a lot of spaceships probably. Actually, yeah, just tons of all the
All the
spaceships.
spaceships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have been in my 890 jump. Thank you very much.
Oh, we'd be in your 600i executive.
My
Uh,
600i executive
yeah.
parked on top of an 890
There
jump,
you go.
stuck there. Um, but yeah, so the real thing was that basically Elite Dangerous did what I expected. They delivered on time and they produced some really good content, but especially in the later years, it just started to get dry. It's a very big universe, but from my perspective, there's two things about it. One is it's a very good simulation of being a spaceship. You're not a person, you are a spaceship. The other thing is it is a very good simulation of the absolute loneliness of space, right?
Yeah.
Because when you have an almost infinitely procedurally generated galaxy, even if you do play online, which most people play in solo mode out of fear of encountering that one person in the galaxy, um, it just it feels really alone.
You know what's funny about that is that like when we originally had this notion of procedurally generated crap, we're always like, "Oh, this is gonna be it. You know, we'll make whole universes now. The universe is a simulation itself." But after we start getting into it, you start seeing the procedurally generated crap or something.
Yeah,
It has an
no,
effect in
that's
your
has no
brain.
art, has no
Yeah.
art. And so the only places in Elite Dangerous that are really fun to visit are the ones that are really messed up, like extremes of the generator, or the ones that have been handcrafted, right? Those handcrafted experiences always surpass the experiences you get from a purely procedurally generated thing because we are advanced computers ourselves, and the human mind is particularly adept at detecting patterns. And so after a certain point, you start realizing that these are just things that are being generated with the same algorithm because you start to learn the algorithm as you visit more and more moons and planets. Um, and one of the things that really has plagued Elite Dangerous in particular is it hasn't had a lot of different biomes. So even when I went on my first planetary landing, it was like it was Daymar, but Daymar has an atmosphere, whereas none of the moons I had really played on in Elite Dangerous had like a burn-in effect that I could really appreciate or any kind of ambient weather that was really going on. And so I was super excited. I was excited even though when I got out of my it wasn't the it was I got out of my Mustang and fell through the planet. But I was still super pumped because I was
Which
like,
patch
I
was
just
that?
landed it on a planet. I think it was like 3.2.
Okay.
Um, I just remember going down and just like seeing the depth, and it's this transition from being a spaceship, which I was really used to, right? You're used to going down there and like not realizing how big things are,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to get real close. But even if you get real close from a cockpit inside a spaceship, you're so far away from the target still where your cockpit is that you never really appreciate the scale. But like, have you guys ever gone into a spaceship in Star Citizen, like the Prospector in particular? I encountered this. And you're like, oh, I'm real close to this rock. So you start to go out your ladder and you fall like 400 feet down because you thought it was a tiny rock, right? Like, and then you get down there, and you're like, that's huge. It's like bigger than my house.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, and it's nuts the value of transitioning. And that's one of the things I experienced in Elite Dangerous initially when I transitioned from playing it outside of VR to inside VR. That first time I went into a space station and just looked around and saw and felt the scale. I cried.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was
Imagine what Star
so
Citizen's gonna be
beautiful.
like in comparison, hey?
Yeah. But it's like, that's why I will only play Elite Dangerous in VR. And I actually do play Star Citizen in VR every
Oh
once in a
yeah?
while.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a VR player, I've learned how to force Star Citizen into VR mode through Vorpex, and actually, I just recently uncovered some console commands that may allow me to go into a native Oculus mode. So I
Interesting.
will be testing that hopefully this patch. Um, but I try to every major patch test out how it performs in VR. But I want to get to that native experience that I'm used to in Elite Dangerous, where I can stand up and walk around inside my spaceship, i.e., I can walk around in my office and actually look around inside. Um, Especially with how much more attention to detail has been put to the interiors of the spaceships in Star Citizen.
Yo, if you
Um,
figure that out, you gotta send that this way, man. I won't stream it. I won't tell anybody about it. I just want to experience it.
no, I'll stream it live. I have several times, so it's particularly when you're doing it through Vorpex, it's not quite perfect.
I've heard that
And
before, and I
it's
don't really understand, to be honest, because like I am like a crack fiend for VR. Like anything is
so
good, right?
you get the depth perception. The problem is you have to, first of all, you have to do some serious custom work on your controls to get it to work. So my mouse doesn't control the movement on my ship at all. It controls my free look. And that's so that when I go into Vorpex to run the game, I see it moving. My head moves the mouse and therefore changes where I look. But I have to flip a switch constantly to switch it into free look because it automatically turns free look off over time because it's not used to people just hanging in free look eternally. Right. So there's things in the game that make the experience for 90% of people better. But it doesn't make it easier for me to trick the game into running in VR.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, it seems like Masocast has experience with the scale that we're discussing here.
Well,
My
that's
main,
like the thing that makes Star Citizen unique, I think, is the scale. Don't you think?
yeah, it's like we only have one solar system, but it feels so much bigger than even a game like Elite Dangerous, and that's because we get to go on our feet.
Yeah.
Our ships feel bigger. Even the smallest spaceship feels bigger because you get to walk inside it. And that has a huge impact. It also makes it feel like the fact that you're forced to be in first person almost all the time, unless you're using advanced cameras, makes it more immersive, in my opinion. I personally prefer first person games. So that's another reason. Like, if you see me playing other games like Red Dead Redemption and stuff, because I am a variety streamer, one of the things that I do that pisses a lot of people off is I will almost exclusively play in first person mode. I'll even play games like WoW and stuff sometimes in first person mode, but that's mostly because it drives everyone crazy
It's pretty
and it's
hardcore
fun.
right there.
Yeah, right. I'm like, no, I want to see. I'm like, okay, you're right, guys. This is horrible. I'll zoom back out. But like a game that actually is designed to be played in first person is something I generally prefer. Um, I really liked the games like Fallout
Oh
and
yeah, Fallout.
Skyrim before, like these first person RPG experiences. Actually, before I got into VR and started my Super Friends group, I pretty much exclusively played single player RPGs. And I usually avoided MMOs just because of the really toxic experiences I had had
That's so
before.
true. Yeah, they're rampant, aren't they?
But yeah. And so really that's been my experience in Star Citizen. I've been building my org up, I've been building my stream up, and I every Tuesday I run a dedicated Star Citizen event, and my goal is to get to the point where we can have more and more people having an enjoyable experience on those events. I like to sometimes do like private training at the beginning or end where I'll, control how many people are in there. But eventually I want to be running capital ship operations or large bounty missions and things like that that require coordinating a lot of ships. so getting better about that is really important to me. Um, but yeah, the did you have any specific questions for me, by the way? Because I can talk like eternally.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of just a chat,
Yeah.
really. And I mean, I honestly, I'm sorry, I didn't know that much about you before. When we first had met, it was just a random K Penguins pulling me into your channel, and I had no idea what the heck was going on. So this is a good first meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
First,
I'd really
yeah.
been wanting to get to know you better anyway. So I appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with me and for us to chat with each other and to share our experiences with our viewers as well.
It's funny that nowadays it's like Star Citizen seems like the most sanest place on Earth. You know what I mean? It's like, and you know what? Like, well, I say this after like all the politics going on. I mean, you say COVID is one thing, but it's just like a political nightmare right now. Everything. And you know what? I think this is why we need space. This is why we have to push for space.
That's why
Like,
we need actual real space for
well,
sure.
anything is better than nothing. I think that like
Yeah.
humanity, we need to dream. Like we need to continue to dream because otherwise we don't have any motivation to do anything, right? And we're so distracted by the stupid matters in the on the planet when we should be looking at the big picture.
I think what distresses me um personally is that we as a species are willing to spend more money killing each other than we are to actually go and explore and find new land to claim and achieve great things as humanity. It's always been pretty distressing to me. I feel like it would be very easy for our species to achieve a lot more if we would rally behind causes that actually had our focus instead of on those of us that don't like each other on goals that we would have, even if they were competitive goals, right? Like take the old west. It definitely had some, you know, some rough edges to it, but it allowed the population of a large area very quickly. And I think that if we were to rally to say, go populate the moon, go colonize Mars, go, there's basically two options. One is we find a way to get our population to stabilize on the planet and to only consume enough resources that we're just able to stay even keel and we just kind of go to like a stagnant utopian society. Or we can say we're always going to have these elements of our personality as humans that require us to be pushing our limits, so we need to start looking beyond the borders of this planet. And so I really get behind a lot of the logic with Star Trek and stuff personally. Like I'm a huge fan of that series. um but yeah, there you go.
Do you do you follow SpaceX at all? You
I do follow SpaceX. I really am enjoying watching a lot of these people who have the resources to put into it, doing it despite the fact that there's no real government properly
no
funding
doubt,
things
right?
going forward, right? Like I think there's something amazing about that, but I also think that it's disappointing that we aren't willing to rally behind those kind of things, but we're willing to rally behind things that I feel are trivial in the long term. It's the same kind of things that we're encountering right now, where like when we're suddenly told to go home and to, be stuck there for a while, we realize that we've ignored like 90% of the things that might have brought us joy at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that maybe the quarterly profits are less important than whether or not we're going to be alive tomorrow. And I think that that kind of mentality has to be applied across the board for us to really progress as a species. And I don't know that we're ready for it. We'll see. um, I just really want to see us progress as a species. One of the big reasons that I'm super into space games personally is that I always wanted to go to Mars as a child.
Cool.
I spent most of my life and youth and mid age. I When I was in middle school, I was writing codes and sending them to SETI to get sent
Oh man,
out.
I remember that stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
like I came up with my own code languages and was sending them packets with data to send out in hopes that it would find a way to contact extraterrestrial life. Every time I had an assignment in school that they would allow me to choose the topic, it was about Mars, it was about space, it was about, like, I'm just a very space obsessed person. um like, I feel that is the place that humanity should be looking personally. I want us to make this earth better, but I also see a plan of making this earth better to be allowing there to be less of us here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, I'd say.
Um, like, even when I joined the military, I was in Space Command. So, like, I worked with NASA to deal with their launches and everything. But through the process, I realized that if I really wanted to go to space, I would have to abandon my family. And based on the way things lined up and the fact that things just weren't getting approved, there really wasn't a likelihood of me actually going until I was a lot older. I decided that I would rather support our goal to go into space as an engineer, as a father of children who probably want to go to space, and as someone who shares these ideas through my streaming and through mentoring people, but also just participating as much as I could. And for me, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, even No Man's Sky, if I'm feeling like a very chill experience, uh, all kind of help to itch that scratch that I know I'm never going to have personally. There's just not really a likelihood that I'm going to have a 60 OF spaceship that I can fly at 1,300 meters per second and shoot giant lasers out of. And I would really like to do that. But I'm okay with simulating it to get that out of my system so that I can just be like, yeah, what'd you do today? I flew spaceships, right?
Mm.
And so I, I think VR helped teach me that simulating something at a very high degree is actually not so different from experiencing it in real life.
That's cool. Makes me
Like,
feel good for the future.
yeah, I think that we can experience a lot of things better than we thought we could before just by furthering out that technology. And I think that that will really help to inform next generations who want to turn that into actuality. Like, the amount of engineering work that goes into developing these systems and these spaceships and stuff. Like, what do you guys think? You in particular, Seg, do you think that this could lead to basically saying, hey, SpaceX might use these same types of HUDs on their ships in the future if they do a really good job designing them? Right? Like, I feel like sci-fi has continuously informed the next generation of innovation, and that there's so much innovation going into Star Citizen that it could actually be impacting real space travel in the future.
I hope so. I hope so, and I kind of don't because there's things in Star Citizen I wouldn't want to see in the future.
Like what?
Like remember the ballistic commercial and that dude is like smoking? He's got like this weird vape or something, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
1,000 years in the future. I mean, tobacco's cool and all, but I mean, do we really want to be a species that is ingesting tobacco smoke
but
for
it doesn't
1,000
have to
years?
be tobacco smoke. It
It
could
could be
be
weed.
nanites. They could
Yeah,
be curing nanites.
yeah,
You
I
don't know.
guess
You
that's
don't know
true.
what's in that, right?
Right? Yeah.
It could
There's
just.
no
It
better
could.
way to ingest it, though. You think than
It's.
inhalation?
I think it's okay to have fun.
What, like you mean rule of cool fun?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that our species is likely to have the rule of cool for a very long time. So even if that was just like glorified water vapor and it just felt cool to do it, that's okay. Like, outside of fundamentally changing our species, which of course the Star Citizen lore does say they did fundamentally change the species. So We have been genetically engineered in 2900, but I, I think that the rule of cool applying is still valid as long as we have a way for it to still be healthy. But I also think that we have we have two choices as far as our lifespans go, that we're going to have to actually make as a species. Is one is we can make ourselves live very, very long. The other is we can just be okay with the fact that our mortality is the reason that we can continue to reproduce at the speed that we do. Right.
Yep.
And those are really the two choices. Now, once we open up space, it actually becomes okay for us to live longer and still reproduce like rabbits. Um, and so that's why I presented the choice. We can choose to stay on the planet and not go anywhere, but we have to slow down on reproduction, and we have to be comfortable with not increasing our lifespan. And I don't want that answer. I like the idea that I could have my children and my children's children live much longer and more fulfilled lives while journeying to the stars.
I mean, they're gonna have to if they're gonna journey to the stars. They're gonna have to live for millennia, maybe.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even when they're not cold packed, okay. I mean, like, experiencing it. Just having technically been a living organism for a very long time. I know that we are very close to achieving that technology. I still think that mainly I count the part where you're conscious.
Let me ask you, if you had the choice to get Neuralink, would you get Neuralink?
It depends upon the technology's implementation.
Yeah.
What I would probably do is the same thing I normally do for video games. I would wait till the third generation
Okay, but
before
you'd
I
still get
bothered.
it though, right?
Oh, eventually, yeah, yeah,
Eventually you
absolutely.
would. You wouldn't
I
want to
I
be the
would
uncool kid on the playground.
I am totally okay with being the uncool kid on the playground. That was my main like way of socializing before I learned how to behave as a normal human. The thing is, I think that a concept like a Neuralink would be very, very awesome, but it is very high risk, and I wouldn't be an early adopter for that technology. I would be an early adopter for a lot of technology, but I'm careful about what I do to my body. Um, so biohacking and stuff like that. I don't even have tattoos. Like I was actually about to get a wedding ring tattooed on
Oh,
my
that's
finger
cool.
because, but all this COVID stuff happened, so now I have to wait to get a wedding ring tattoo because I out here in Oregon it's super humid, so I kept on getting like the rotten skin underneath the ring, and I was like, all right, this isn't going anywhere. We've been married 13 years. Let's just get
Seal the deal.
this crosshatched on there. That way I can keep on doing my outdoor heavy activities and my paddling and my building and stuff and not worry about getting a crushed
I
finger.
agree. I think more people should do that. The obsession with gold is kind of odd.
It is odd. I like gold for like contacts on my audio cables and for the contacts on my video cards.
If you're interested in SpaceX stuff, are you following the live stream at all? The SN4 was supposed to do their static test today. Hear about that at all?
I was not following it. I was mostly preparing for this show
Oh,
actually.
that's
So
great. Okay, well, I follow the SpaceX stuff a little obsessively, and I was looking at your intro screen. I saw you have a number of like Cold War era rockets in the intro. Look
yeah.
like Atlas Agena. I think I saw Atlas 4.
Yeah, we
Was there
had
an Arian
those.
in there as well? I couldn't tell. It looked like a
Yeah, I think
Redstone, but it was bigger, like
yeah,
a
I
Mark
kind
III.
of built through all of the footage trying to like build to the present and then throw us into the footage in the verse itself. Just kind of transition. So it goes from like really like chill and inspirational to shenanigans in space. Be like, this is what you get for going to space. You get Captain GandoraOlap in a prowler.
I would love to go for if that becomes a thrill ride in the future to go in like a Redstone rocket. Just
Yeah,
shoot yourself up. I would do it.
yeah, just for fun,
Yeah,
right?
just for fun, 100%.
I do find it interesting. They're starting to take RSVPs for, people doing a vacation into space now.
Well,
So
what
that's
about the
cool.
moon? I mean, what about that recent announcement with the lunar competition and getting a lunar lander? Like, if they're going to send dozens, if not hundreds of people in those starships to the moon, that's a new
Are
space tourism, right?
they, well, are they doing civilians for that one now?
Oh, we don't. They never announce a cruise, but it's done by SpaceX. So I
Okay, yeah,
mean,
yeah. So they'll take anyone who's got
they
the
will,
money
and
for the ticket.
that's how the whole Starship thing started. Was the Blue Moon project done by those Japanese entrepreneurs? They like paid him $1 billion and said, "Build us a rocket to the moon," and he said, "Okay, sure."
I think that it's a really good approach,
I
right?
agree.
Like if people are willing to throw money at that experience, it's going to push humanity so much further. And I think that that's really really important. And by the way, everyone in chat, thank you all for being here. I hope you're enjoying the show. Uh, and feel free to ask questions. I guess if you guys wanted to put a big question in brackets and say what questions you have for me or Seg, I'm happy to answer them.
You can answer
So
my questions. Definitely answer my questions.
yeah, absolutely. Did you have another one?
No, no, I just mean if they ask questions from
Yeah,
part of the answer.
yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying, if you have a question, you can ask
Oh
it. I
yeah.
thought you were like, "Aren't you going to answer my question?" I thought I was answering your
No, I
question.
meant like if they
What's
ask a
the
question in chat.
matter?
Okay, now we're just talking. So confused.
I'm just joking with you.
Tell me about the cabin that you're building.
Okay, you want to talk about the cabin I'm
Oh
building?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I bought some land out on the coast last year, and it is very, very, very sloped land. The same reason that I am a fan of the Cutlass is I am a fan of a good deal. Okay. Um, uh, so in order to build a cabin on land that is like 20 plus grade, I had to build a platform that, like, on one end it's 8 feet in the air and on the other end it's in the dirt. Uh, because I didn't want to do a bunch of excavation. I really wanted to keep the land intact. So first thing I did was build. I put a bunch of piers into the ground and built a platform on top of that. Um, then I built a platform on top of that platform because I realized that 2x4 was way too thin for a big platform. So then I have it latticing in the other direction with 2x6, leading to a 9-inch thick base, which is really, really solid. Then on top of that, I've built a 5.2-foot hip wall and a 15-12 pitch A-frame style roof on top of it. It is beautiful, but if you're doing your first like complex build, do not do an A-frame wall on top of a very tall hip wall. This has been very difficult to do alone. I had been expecting to be able to like hire help, but because of everything going on right now, I have only been able to do it with me and my wife.
It's a
So
good
Cat
project.
Datillo Art, she's watching too. She's my wife. She's awesome. She does all my artwork. Um, and yeah, so it's just been me, her, my 10-year-old, and my now just turned 7-year-old, building the whole thing.
How big is it?
It's to keep it in code so I don't have to have a permit. I made it just under 200 square feet on the
Oh,
base level.
it's like a mini home. What they call
Yeah,
those things?
yeah. So it's a 16 by 16 platform, but I have a little deck in the back so that it's not too big on the inside.
Yeah.
And then there's a loft space on top, which apparently lofts don't count out here as finished square footage. So I think like the usable square footage is going to end up somewhere around 200 or around like 320 or 340 square feet. And the technical square footage is about like 190.
Good. I'm
But the idea is that like while maintaining this land and everything, I've been sleeping out in hammocks
Oh,
even in
nice.
winter.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to have a roof,
Yeah.
even though it's a tarp over the roof. Like having that enclosed structure feel. Uh, I think it was like day before yesterday. Me and my 10-year-old went and slept in hammocks inside that enclosure, and it was the first time we've ever slept out there without just being strung up between trees. Like even when it was snowing, we were just in hammocks between trees when we were out there trying to work on the base and stuff. So I'm just really, really excited to just not be sleeping out in the open next winter. Summer's gonna be fine, right? But like in the winter, in the temperate rainforest on the coast, it rains like 8 days a week.
You guys not get any snow there?
I like 0.1 inches.
Okay. So
So
you
like
could actually survive a winter in that type of
absolutely. Yeah.
enclosure?
Well, in that enclosure, I'm doing it. Those walls are like actually twice as thick as they need to be to keep our temperature good, because I'm building the entire thing to the same standard I would build a standard house that has 1,000 square feet, but I'm building a 200 square feet structure with 2x6 thick walls.
And it's on a
And so
slope? Like it's sloped?
yeah. So the slope's really steep. That's why when you see the pictures, you'll see how it goes really far down on the backside. And if you guys want to see in progress photos of this, you can go to my Twitter. It's twitter.com/GandoraOlap, just like twitch.tv/GandoraOlap. Um, I didn't think people would actually be interested in it, but a bunch of people came to my show being like, "Where's the progress shots?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, okay."
Well, the thing is that people can relate to building houses a lot more than they can a space video game. So kind of pull in
Yeah,
a separate audience just doing that, right?
there's that, and I think it just makes us a little bit more real, right? To share a little bit of what's really going on in our lives. Because despite all the spaceships, we are technically still real people. Um, at
This
the
is
end of the day.
beautiful. I'm looking at pictures of it now.
But yeah, I think that it's really been, for me, one of the only things that's been keeping me sane. Like there's two things that have been keeping me sane during this. It's like I've got a really nice family and friend balance from the fact that I was already used to working from home with my wife and children. And I already was running a really awesome, chill gaming group. So most of my friends, the way I already hung out with them because I'm out in the sticks, was online. So I was way ahead of the curve there. But the way I'm getting out that like physical anxiety is to go out there and just put that thing together, right? Like when you're really anxious and stuff, there's just something about going out, digging a hole, sticking a stick in it, and nailing it together. And for me, as someone who really likes to do those kind of projects where I'm physically engaged with them, it helps to balance out the fact that I spend most of my time on the computer. And so having that balance is really important in my life. And so I think I'm kind of odd that way. I don't know anyone else in my circles in Star Citizen that basically is an outdoor survivalist on the weekends. But yeah, like I'm a full-time streamer, but then like when you don't see me streaming, I'm usually out in the woods somewhere, like teaching my kids how to make fire or catching fish. And like I'm totally off the grid when I go into those circumstances, usually. Like I go out like last year when I wasn't streaming or running my software development stuff, I would literally go to a point where there was no cell phone reception and the only thing I had was a sat phone just in case there was an emergency. Just because I like that ability to fully disconnect and clear my mind and to really think about everything in life that needs to get tackled.
What's it going to be like when we have Starlink on board and we'll never be able to disconnect?
Well, I'll have to have a disconnect button.
Yeah,
Like I won't be willing to, and that's another thing. Like I won't be willing to put something in me that I can't turn off.
right.
Right. That is fundamentally important for the human mind. It's unable to cope with continuous noise coming from the outside. That's at least what I personally believe from experiencing, you know, if you guys aren't using do not disturb mode on your phone when you should be sleeping or spending time with your family, turn it on. Like, everything's going to be fine. Your boss is going to be fine. Your friends are going to be fine. Spend time in the moment when you are experiencing things. When I am streaming, my notifications are off. I'm spending time with you guys, right? It doesn't matter who wants to get a hold of me. The only people who can reach me right now are you, Sigelian, and the people who are in the chat for this. And being in the moment right now is really important. If I pulled my phone out and just started looking at it, right, like, yeah, this would be a very different experience for everyone. That's something I had to learn over time. And my wife, she's in chat, so she will attest to when I forget that lesson that it just sucks. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Would you really want to be connected 100% of the time? Like, how would you want to control the inbound messages and when you're using a communication platform if you were to like permanently link your mind to the net?
It's a good question. Like, is it like are those two things? Does one rely on the other? There's a word for that. Okay, well, because if we have Starlink, then we have Neuralink, so we have constant connectivity at that point. But the thing is like I really want the superhuman abilities. I want to be able to have an amazing memory because I've never had a good memory in my life, and I wonder what that's like. And I want to be able to perform math, and calculus and all those things that I couldn't do very well during high school. I want the superhuman ability if that means I'm always connected. Well, I guess that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to take.
And I think that kind of stuff would be really cool, right? Being like, oh, let me access that picture of something, or let me perform that calculation. But this is something we're slowly approaching already by just being able to reach out to the phone that's on us at all times. It's just a matter of making that kind of technology more convenient. But part of that is also, where is the profit going to be for that system? How are they going to milk more money out of us?
Why does that have to happen though? Why does that have to be a fear?
It doesn't have to be a fear. It has to be a knowledge that that will be a reality depending upon who puts it out.
Yeah.
There, as a species, there will always be members of our society who are trying to take advantage of or extract profit from others. And I'm okay with being the way that someone makes money as long as I'm comfortable with and knowledgeable of the things that I'm sacrificing in the process. Right?
Yeah.
What is the benefit and what is the cost? I want to understand that about any technology I adopt in my life. And that's one of the reasons that I will look into a new technology really carefully before I adopt it. I used to adopt almost every technology. I would just go out and I want to try this, I want to try that, I want to try this, I want to try that, and then it's just like so much consumption that you never actually extract the value from those items. So, some people call it digital minimalism, and it's weird. It's weird to be a full-time streamer who has all my friends online and everything like that, but like by compacting what services I use and what tools I use in the digital world, I'm able to extract more value from those items.
It's funny being in the software industry, we get to work with lots of coders, and from my experience, they seem to be the most disciplined group of people. It's like they like outdoorsmen, whatever it takes to keep their brain productivity high. That's what the things they've
Yeah.
done.
I think that we are the type of people who really enjoy solving puzzles. It's what we get out of video games. It's what we get out of the work we do, right? Like, even like as a software developer and an engineer, I chose a video game that is going to break most of the time I play it at least once. And I actually enjoy those experiences, right? One of my biggest worries about Star Citizen, especially someone who has put as much money into it myself and who has worked so hard to become a part of this community, is that when it actually does release in the far future and they stop like if they stop doing what they're doing right now of pushing the envelope, I may get bored and not really want to play it once it's like totally stable,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting to think that the point that everyone else is super excited for, I might get less joy than I get today when that time comes. And I have to emotionally prepare myself for that. But I know that I'll still have a lot of fun with the org and the other orgs that I've been working with, right? Like I have networked with so many amazing people like yourself, the Night Crew, Star Citizen, Lost Light Society. I have worked with, the founder of Galog and helped them with the work that they've done, right? We have a lot of connections with each other and a lot of potential to spend time doing things together. And I think that once things are more stable, we'll transition more from ooh, let's find ways to break the game and to transport NPCs to places that they don't belong and stuff, to let's play the game and enjoy the experience with each other. And so that's why I'm trying to practice and get better about coordinating large group activities, because that's a skill set that has to reside in the leader that is running those activities more so than the game's ability to function during those.
Emergent gameplay, I think they describe that as, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And I think that's, that's one thing that keeps MMOs alive. I would say that Second Life, it's still kicking, but it's had its long lifespan, mostly thanks to community generated content. Sort of jam.
Yeah.
So, what's Super Friends?
So the Super Friends is the gaming fellowship that I started
What is a
in
fellowship like?
Orbis.
Are you guys hauling a ring off to Mount Mordor?
It depends on the game we play.
Oh, okay, fair
So
enough.
we're a variety gaming group that started in Orbis Online and now has we have organizations in Star Citizen, Eve Online, Elite Dangerous, Star Wars: The Old Republic, World of Warcraft, uh, Black Desert Online. Basically, whatever we want to play together, we play it together. We have groups in lots of different games, and we do basically every single day of the week we have an activity in the Super Friends. It's scaled to the point where obviously I don't coordinate all of those events anymore, but it did start out as me running every single event until we got to a certain scale at which I needed to teach people that it was okay if I didn't want to play that particular game that day for them to still play. Um, so at this point, the Super Friends every Tuesday run Star Citizen, and then we tend to be really hot on Star Citizen during patch time, and then we go into a little more once or twice a week cadence of doing operations or helping each other. We do have a very large number of Star Citizen players in the server that work together, and we have a tighter knit organization itself. People who are actually official members of the Super Friends versus people who are there to play and participate, those individuals tend to stream with me and have more privileges to help manage channels. We have other streamers who are in the Super Friends as well. And so we all coordinate together and play together, whether or not we're streaming or we're just doing it privately. Like just before this call here, since I hadn't had a chance to play Star Citizen with them in a little while, I've been doing a lot of shows. I did the Night Crew hosting yesterday, this today, and then tomorrow I'm on the captain's table. So I haven't had a lot of time to actually interface with them or even stream on my channel based on all the extra content that I've been doing around Star Citizen right now. So I was able to use the features in Discord to have us all share our webcams and just kind of hang out for a couple hours earlier today, which was really nice. Uh, it has more of a like personal family vibe when you do it offline too. But yeah, that group has been running for about 2.5 years now, and I contribute a lot of my continued sanity to the fact that folks from the Super Friends have rallied together and still been able to spend time with each other despite our distance in a way that feels really natural and true to each other, right? So the group has meant a lot to me. They're the reason. They're the ones that convinced me to stream. They're the ones that convinced me to play Star Citizen. And really, fundamentally, the things that folks in the Super Friends have done as we've created that group together is the reason that you see me here today at all. I never would have streamed if it wasn't for peer pressure from my wife and them. Which is, it's odd to have my wife is the one who convinced me partly to stream.
But you need that support.
You
I think you
always
need that.
talk to yourself when you play games. Why the hell aren't you streaming? That's what she said. But yeah, and then recently, guys, if you didn't guess, I've joined the Night Crew, which turns out to be a fabulous group of streamers. And the cool thing about the Night Crew compared to the Super Friends is we're a dedicated group of streamers and content creators, whereas the Super Friends, I don't even care if you have a microphone sometimes, right? It's more about the ethos of how we play with each other. We're a chill group. We are not elitists. We don't do like super secret stuff. So like folks who really want to have like secret ops and who want to like find new content in a game and then hide it, right? That doesn't really jive well with the rules that we set for ourselves. So we tend to go find new material and leak it out to the public in video games, right? So if we find a new way to do something or anything like that, a new boss mechanic in a game we're playing that no one knows about, we want to be the first ones to go like, hey, we found a new cool thing. And we don't like to keep that to ourselves, even if it might be fundamentally better for our group potentially to hide that information and take advantage of it secretly for a little while. That is not the behavior that we usually try and encourage. And the reason we baked that into the rules was Orbis Online was really bad about that when we first started. Even base game mechanics, because it was all in VR, they had actually set the developers had set it up so that they were telling players they weren't allowed to share how to play the game. Like the idea was that players just had to figure things out. So it ended up with all of these end game groups that were super, super secular and hiding information from each other to try and get an advantage in PvP and in conquering content. And my personality doesn't really jive very well with that. So that's why I set the rules up that way.
Me too. I completely agree. But I'm coming at it from completely opposite angle of you. I'm like, I've never, this whole thing that's going on with orgs. By the way, I want to explore this notion with you because you and I seem to have similar mindsets. The whole notion of these huge orgs and what they do in the gaming hemisphere, it boggles my mind. I've never seen such a thing before. And I'm just sitting here in Star Citizen watching it all unfold, and I honestly don't even know what's going on. So like I'm really curious to know about your opinion with these sorts of behavior because you got hundreds of people in your club, your org, your guild, whatever. Why do these people do these things that they do? Why is everything so inclusive?
You mean inclusive or exclusive?
Exclusive? Well,
Yeah.
the
Okay. Yeah. So,
information is inclusive, wouldn't you say? No, it's
well,
exclusive.
I guess
They're hiding it.
give me a. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about groups that try and find stuff and hide it
Yeah.
from each other. So part of it is a role play element. Okay.
Okay.
I have members who have joined my group and decided that they had to be like more casual members of the Super Friends because for them it was really important to do secret squirrel stuff. Right? They didn't like the idea that their activities might be broadcast on my show. They didn't like the idea that if they found some kind of secret meta that I would talk about it or that I would suggest we publish that to the community and to the world as a whole. I think part of it, the part that I find most disturbing is when groups find exploits and try and keep that a secret instead of reporting it to the developers.
That's a problem in Star Citizen, isn't it?
That makes me really uncomfortable. Like, so let me rewind to a time that I refused to play Star Citizen for longer than I have since or before that. Do you guys remember when the meta was putting size 6 guns on every single slot because you could put any gun anywhere, including your missile slots?
I'm a non-combatant, so although I was here for it, I don't remember it.
So for me, I am a combatant. I one of the things that converted me to the game, other than the scale and the ability to interact with others, was I went out and fought ships and found that their AI was so much better than Elite Dangerous before I realized I was fighting players. Um, and so the engagement in very good PvP and PvE, depending upon which patch we are on, has been one of the main things that I really enjoy. So during that time period where the meta eventually became that you were exploiting this bug that allowed you to equip any size weapon on any type of slot, that essentially ruined the game for me because I wasn't comfortable doing my gameplay loop using an exploit, right? I'm okay with messing around with those kind of things to duplicate them and to then go in and say on a ticket in the issues council, yes, this bug does occur. Here's a link to a clip of it happening so that you can see it. Please reach out to me if you want me to duplicate it again, right? But the idea that you as a group would keep this a secret so that you could kill a bunch of other ships and gloat about how you were more powerful or build up so that you had the highest scores on Arena Commander or whatever, right? Like whatever your weird goal is, like while failing to report that and to replicate it and to make sure that it was addressed early, like it's a disservice to what you're supposed to be doing in this circumstance, which is helping the game develop.
Yeah.
And I I don't agree with that. I do understand. So there's something I experienced in Elite Dangerous, and I felt like they handled it really well. If you've ever played Elite Dangerous, what you'll notice is that because of the way the algorithms work, things change on your trade routes and on your missions. As you build up different states for different locations, you can essentially drive multiplayer activity to push a whole faction to take over a location so that their missions will then become more valuable in that spot so that you can get a higher reward there. There's also things you can do with the alien encounters in that game to basically force locations to need trades for meta alloys and things like that, which are super, super high value missions. So what ends up happening in that game is you will find hotspots somewhere in the galaxy where if you go here within the next day, you will trade and you'll make 50 million an hour. And compared to your normal like 2 to 10 million an hour, maybe 20, right? There was a significantly better revenue, but everyone understood that because the company that was managing that looked at all the profits that everyone made every day, that they would see that that was a high profit area and that they would nerf that profit within 24 to 48 hours.
Interesting.
And so active players would communicate and coordinate events around these hotspots, but I saw it as emergent gameplay. And if you can patch those quickly enough, then it's like, well, you validly made $1 billion there. You spent 2 days of work doing it. You guys spent probably weeks of work building it to the point where it would hit those particular circumstances, and you only had a limited window to make that money. So that's okay. But it's also the same mentality, right? It wasn't like because we knew that they were going to patch it and that they would be aware of it, because historically they always were able to detect it with the automated systems they had. No one was like pinging the employees to say, fix this. I don't want to make this much money.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when someone finds something that they feel is valid, I understand why they wouldn't report it. But when you're doing something that clearly is game breaking, right? Like when I found a way to replicate Haydenite in my hab, I created a YouTube video. I pinged Robert Space Industries and said, hey, this, and I created tickets,
Thank
and
you
I
for
had
doing
a
that.
bunch of people like replicate the ticket and be like, dude, I can take half a backpack. I can take like 5 pieces of Haydenite in my backpack and create an infinite supply of Haydenite, therefore an infinite supply of money. When you look at it, the amount of money you could make per hour was actually less than you could make with trade. But initially, it was a much faster way to get your starting capital than anything else in the game. And it was clearly broken, right? Uh, and it was, it was at the point where you were basically you were able to take one of those pieces of fossilized poop, replicate it enough times that like we did a whole episode of my show where I put a piece of poop in front of every single hab on Port Olisar and filled the cones, like those map room cones, completely with poop.
Okay.
And right, like it was just that ability to do those kind of things, if you're not reporting them and you're using them, that's a problem. And that's one of the big reasons that we've had to historically have a lot more wipes than we should.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that I think that in elements where you're doing PvE content, I don't have an issue with those kind of things. It's when you are actually using it to leverage an advantage against other players in PvP, it becomes a real problem. And the ability to really draw that line gets super blurred. Because when you're essentially cheating, everything but other people become boring,
That's true.
right?
Dude, it's like a god complex.
Yeah. Because even if you can destroy them really easily, it's still fun for some individuals to turn the salt channel on, which is what I call the global chat, and just see the results of their behavior. And so for me, I don't enjoy it, right? Like even when I kill someone in combat, like I prefer to say, good fight and give suggestions on how to improve, or let them know what strategy I employed against them so that next time maybe they'll wipe me, right? And I prefer, like, when I do PvP, I want it to be against a consenting individual who wants to engage in PvP. Personally, that's the only way I enjoy PvP. But I do understand that in a PvP everywhere world, that not everyone's going to be a goody two shoes like me as well. Which, now there are very significant consequences. So it's less of an issue, I guess, now if you want to just gank someone in Aurora and then spend 24 hours in prison. I guess that's a fair trade. Um,
It's funny how much things have changed with the whole criminal system
yeah,
in
I
this
think it's a
patch.
little unbalanced, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's a valid play loop for criminals to enjoy their game too. So unless they're actually doing something that's against the terms of service, I think that more than a couple hours is insane. Uh, Especially, it's just a balancing issue, right? Like, even if it's a gameplay loop I don't do, like, I'm not a trader. I don't generally do trade. I almost every time I try it, I lose every cent I put into the ship. So that doesn't mean that you can't be a trader.
No, that's what makes Star Citizen nice, right? You can be your own
Yeah,
precious butterfly.
exactly. Like I think that it's totally valid, and like I like to go steal spaceships and do PvP with other consenting human beings. Um, but I don't think that someone who wants to do that versus someone who wants to go be a bounty hunter should have a dramatically more negative experience. Because the only reason the bounty hunter gameplay loop exists is because there's people who are enjoying this other gameplay loop. And I understand there should be consequences. So I like the fact that now new players are less likely to encounter someone who's just going to because they're bored, blow up their ship, right? I'm tired of seeing people just explode auroras because they were bored. I think that if you're that bored, you should probably jump into another game, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I only play Star Citizen once a week between major patches because I don't want to ruin my favorite game for myself. I'm not the type of person who can do the same thing every day and not suck all of the joy out of it. So that's why, generally speaking, you will only see me play or talk about Star Citizen once a week during most times of the month, right? Right now, Star Citizen has a lot going on. So it's been hopping. We've been talking a lot about it. But I'm gonna be jumping back into Bannerlord soon, right? And I'll hopefully be able to steal my kid's PlayStation from the house and we'll play Final Fantasy VII Remake at some point when I can afford to pick it up, right? Like experiencing other games, particularly other space games, helps to keep us grounded too. Like, I think it's important for us to have a rounded experience so that we understand the things that Star Citizen does really well and the things that maybe they could improve on too. If you live completely in a vacuum, you won't really know what other things there are to offer. And we're supposed to be giving feedback on this game that we're supporting and testing and helping in the development cycle to help make sure it continues to become the ultimate, sci-fi life simulator. So that means we have to look around us at other sources so that we have better feedback too. But yeah,
I
that's
play Minecraft. That's what I do to relax
I've
away
been
from Star
convinced to
Citizen.
play Minecraft occasionally. My oldest has been super obsessed with Minecraft until recently for the last 7 years.
It's
So
liquid cocaine, man. Telling you.
it just killed it for me though, having
Yeah.
like my kid constantly talk about like every birthday present, every Christmas present for 7 years was Minecraft themed. So when all of my friends were like, come on, play Minecraft with me, I was like, and they kept on and kept on and kept on. And eventually I played it with them and it was fun, but it's like, for me, what I do in Minecraft is generally always the same. I go build a sandcastle, like an elaborate sandcastle, and then before I finish it, everyone else on the server gets bored and they wipe it and they go do something different. And so I continuously find myself at the point where I am like trying to build something, but everyone else isn't able to, like, all of my games. I do the same way I do Star Citizen, where I like play it really hard for a day and then I don't do anything with it for a week. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't, I used to be super, super obsessive. So I had to pull back and control that for myself because I would get way, way too into the weeds and I wouldn't be able to do anything else in life. I would have to do everything about that particular game or that particular project. And pulling back personally is part of the way that I like, made sure I stayed human, if that makes sense. I tend to have like a really obsessive personality if I don't keep it in check. So that's what I've learned to do is to basically set a really strict schedule for myself so that I don't get too deep in the weeds on things. Um, but yeah, I understand there's some catharticism to going back to one of those old titles that you've always really enjoyed. Like Skyrim does that for me sometimes. Like if I really just want to like, you know, relive some of those old memories or some of the old RPGs. Like we recently played Final Fantasy VII, the classic,
Mm.
with some mods on it, and it was really enjoyable to experience that game that I played a bunch of times before with a live audience and just be like, hey, this is like one of the classics. This is part of what made me who I am.
The I don't really think of Minecraft so much as like a nostalgic game. I think of it more like Scrum, to be honest. It's just this place where you go and you just do whatever you do. Skyrim's good in VR though. I don't think Skyrim's quite the same. I find it more like Minecraft, like a retreat, a fantasy retreat in VR. Have you
Yeah,
played it in VR?
yeah. VR Skyrim was amazing. Like
Yeah.
I haven't beaten it in VR, but I did a lot of gameplay in it. It was difficult to stream it because of the fact that VR is inherently difficult to stream. Um, but also because I tend to have it modded in such a way that I would probably need to put it on Pornhub, not on Twitch. So it was I prefer to have more realism in the world, and it can be a little more crude than I'm able to play. I think it's because I've played it so many times too. So I have like 200 something mods on it. So yeah, that's one of the main things. And be like, well, I don't really want to have a different experience in it than what I'm enjoying. So I just ended up not playing it on stream generally.
Mm.
Um, Whereas Minecraft, that's less of an issue, obviously.
I look at just like Minecraft as a way for people to escape from whatever it is they're into and just go play with Lego, basically.
Yeah, it is like a Lego game, and I like this collaborative building thing,
Yeah.
right? I like that I can just like give my friends a stack of dirt and be like, let's make a dirt castle today. Um, and then you've got a lot of it caters to a lot of different personalities with how modded it is now, where you can be like, you have your tinkerer who makes a completely automated pizza factory, right? I got a member of my group named Bud, and he if there's a way to automate stuff, he will super obsess over it, and he will automate everything to like tend to his garden, generate the highest quality food items. And like when we added the space mods, he went to every planet before anyone else had built a rocket, right? Like those kind of tasks he gets super into and is really good at. Whereas me, I was like, hey guys, can you teach me how I can generate infinite sand so I can stop going and getting it, right? Like that was
That's
what I did.
cheating.
Because I no, it was automation. I was generating sand.
Yeah.
Um, I was using the mods to their fullest extent. Okay. Uh, and so the funny thing is though, like I was still just building a really big sand castle, right? That's that's what I did. And like it's even in my first game in Minecraft, I just built a really big sandcastle, and then when I was done building the sandcastle, I got infinite TNT and I exploded the entire ocean until it was falling into the abyss below, just because I thought it was really funny. And and my gameplay in that game really hasn't changed much in the last 7 years.
No, we are who we are. You know what? Like, I love watching people play games because you get to see what their personality is really like. Like, you see how they handle pressure, or like how they communicate, or whatever, how they problem solve.
Yeah, no, it's you learn a lot about a person by putting them in a circumstance where they're solving puzzles. Um, but yeah,
A game that I've never played before is Dungeons and Dragons.
what?
Yeah,
You've never played Satan's game?
I've never played Satan's game before, and I've always been like this hardcore role player, too.
That's
Because like
funny. That's funny.
in Ultima, like Ultima's a role play game, but it's such an OG role playing game because you had to type the typing game almost,
Gotcha.
and it just gave me a different, I don't know, perspective on the whole role play scheme. So I never got into D&D because of that.
Yeah, no. So Dungeons and Dragons, I have been playing it since I was fairly young. But I think my first like real serious running tabletop games was 5 years ago. But I played Dungeons and Dragons quite a bit before that. But it was always a little bit more casual, right? Where I'd be like tentatively participating in the activity. And I guess I've really, since getting Fantasy Grounds in particular 5 years ago or so, enjoyed being able to have the digital tabletop games with friends. Uh, it's a little bit hit or miss when you get certain personality dynamics together. One of the things you'll find when you get people who are new to role play is as a DM, you realize that part of your job is you are a therapist and you're helping people through their personal issues. When people role play, if they're not really comfortable with role play, a lot of times their own personal issues with reality start to come out in their characters. There's a couple different things you'll encounter. Uh, One is people who are unable to separate themselves from their character. So people will they'll make a character, and then whenever someone role plays not liking that character or not liking something that character did, they'll take it personally.
Got to be
And
creative, though, don't you think? You just got to be creative.
no, but it's not that they're not creative people, it's that they haven't truly adapted this mindset of role play. They're Because you're sitting here with your friend and your friend is like, you're stupid and I hate you, and they don't understand, even though they know logically that that person is speaking in character about their character, they're unable to differentiate the input as meaning your character is disliked by their character,
I see.
right?
Does that actually happen in games where one's calling another one stupid or calling them names?
Absolutely, yeah.
Ugh, that's a dicey
It
situation.
just depends, right? And it depends upon what you allow characters to do. But ultimately, if you allow people to create their own characters when they come into a campaign and you don't control that pretty tightly, you'll end up with characters that naturally, when role played correctly, will kill each other.
Hmm.
because because traditional D&D in particular has a lot of character archetypes that are extreme opposites of each other. So when you're participating in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, you want to work closely with the dungeon master and the other players in creating your characters so that you have a shared background with those characters that will naturally incline you to work together. The problem that I've encountered several times is that people make characters and they demand that those characters are super duper unique to the point where they will naturally be in conflict with other people's characters because they have unique personalities. And with the right players, it can be a really enjoyable experience, but you have to be comfortable with the idea that one of the play sessions, your two characters may disagree with each other, they may kill each other, and then the next session you may have created new characters. And that can be a lot of fun if you have mature adults who are playing, who are able to understand that it's not you I'm mad at, right? Like if I was playing with you, Seg, and I had a lawful evil character who had a compulsion to steal from people, and you had a lawful good uh, character like a paladin who had a like your god dictated that you killed all thieves, and you saw me stealing, then you would have the compulsion to either kill me or have broken your religion,
Hmm.
which as a paladin is unacceptable. You can't break your religion. You literally lose your magical powers. So we would have to fight, or you would have to convince me to change my ways,
Hmm.
right?
That's
And
an
that
intense
can make
game.
for a really interesting gameplay session. But one of us has to be comfortable with dying or changing the way we behave.
Hmm. I guess this is
And
what I meant by creativity, It's a creative thinking.
yeah, and if you're comfortable with that possibility, you can do really cool, interesting things. When you first start, I recommend fairly vanilla backgrounds so that we're like, hey, we're from the same family, or we're from the same kingdom, and we've been sent out on a quest to work together, and we know that if we do anything bad to each other, someone's going to kill us. Problem solved. It gets rid of all these like weird like, well, if I want to, I can do this, right? But it does get rid of some of this personality and intrigue in running characters that are really unique and that are individuals. Uh, but a big part of being a successful DM is controlling the things that lead to those and keeping people in the mindset that, hey, uh, speak out of character and make sure you guys are really not fighting. But also, hey, it's okay for us to not have the whole session be that fight. We can just say, hey, they argued for a couple hours and now they're both tuckered out. And we'll roll for it. One of you has a bloody nose, right? But if you actually let people come to blows personally, it can lead to real actual problems between individuals.
Fist fights over Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, well, it's possible. And there's the big thing is if people have a lot of unresolved issues personally, especially with each other, those tend to come out in role play even when they shouldn't.
Maybe this is a way for like warring people to coexist or something. Maybe we should get like Trump and like the Chinese president play D&D together. Maybe they'll end up being best friends after it.
It'd be interesting, right? And I think that video games actually serve a lot of that kind of need already. They just create a more structured approach that is less biased, right? Like the problem is with me as a DM, first of all, the sky's the limit. I am the god of the game, and therefore anything can happen. But also, if you piss me off, I could strike you down with lightning. And in a reasonable game, just because the game is pissed off at you, it's not going to strike you down with lightning unless you did a very specific set of things to piss it off, right? And if the other player did the same things, they would also be struck by lightning, and therefore it's fair. And that's one of the things that's really important about an automated, like digital representation when it comes to giving that kind of fair experience. So what you tend to experience when you're doing Dungeons and Dragons is that people perceive different ways that people are talked to and stuff. You have actual tonality that gets introduced. That kind of role play presents an extra layer beyond what you experience when a computer is doing the simulation, right? And that I think that when we looked at studies, the same thing that you see when you have an area that is allowed to have pornography versus an area that's not able to, then sexual crimes actually are less in the areas that are able to have it. And when you have the ability to have video games, you actually do see a decrease in aggressive behaviors and those related crimes for those who have a lot of access to that,
Absolutely,
right?
man. Like I always think about in like let me know what you think, but like I always imagine okay, when I went to Bar Citizens, I was always so surprised with like the variety of humans that show up. Like probably not the people I would normally associate myself with, but because we have this commonality, then we get into it. And I think like if there's ever a fist fight at a Bar Citizen, won't they just solve their issues in game? Would that be relevant?
I think that would make more sense, right? And
Yeah.
especially if like we're used to doing that, right? And I've actually had things where we're like, hey, we're we're mad right now. Let's fight each other in game. Do we feel better? Okay, cool.
Probably
Right?
will.
Yeah, and but like obviously I like to go blow people up on a regular basis. So I can't do that in reality, right? Like I'm a bounty hunter, but I don't want to actually hurt people. I just do have a desire to hunt. And for me, like I actually go and fish and hunt and do those kind of like survival things on the weekend too, because I really, really do have this like deeply ingrained need to connect with that element of my personality. But I can't really do it in a really interesting way outside of video games, right? Even though I was in the military, I didn't want to ever like actually be in the circumstance where I had to hunt people. But in video games, I can simulate that experience and get that same level of like cerebral stimulation from how challenging it is to tackle a human opponent, right? Even in chess and other things, like having a human opponent in a non actually physically violent way satisfies so much of that desire to fight in humans.
Hmm.
And we can ignore it, but it doesn't go away. It is a natural part of being a human being. And so that's at least my perspective, is this ability to simulate things like this at a very high fidelity helps better humanity's ability to simulate the things that we have a need to do but shouldn't actually be doing, and to also practice behaviors that may be dangerous, right? Like the idea of practicing driving and practicing, especially in VR, safe shooting behaviors and stuff like that can be practiced in a virtual reality 100% safely, right? The worst case is you might get a headache from having a VR headset on too long. Um, and that ability to practice these skills, or like, if you guys haven't checked it out in virtual reality, there's a game called Climb, right? I've had a lot of friends in real life die in rock climbing accidents, IRL, but you get a lot of the same joy and exhilaration and like heart pumping action by playing a game like Climb, where you're simulating that experience. And there's a lot of people I know, particularly having been in the military, that have a real need for adrenaline rushes, adrenaline junkies. That's what you call them, right? And my hope is that we can help individuals who have that strong need to take less risk in their real life and still get that kind of exhilaration that they need to have the endorphins and to feel happy as human beings, um, without putting themselves at so much personal risk. But yeah, it's something that, to me, I think I've had like 4 or 5 people that were pretty close friends when I was stationed in Colorado die just in the last couple of years from taking excessive risks in outdoor activities.
I don't really understand it, to be honest, but I'm such a recluse that I'm just on the total opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I used to climb with them, and there was like, one of them in particular, they would say, oh, if you weren't here with me, I probably would have died. Because I was such a safety freak, right? Like, it was like, for me, anything that had to do with safety, like I would go take the class. I would be like super studious, and I'm unwilling generally to take, like, I love doing high risk activities, but I must mitigate every risk possible. And if I don't feel I'm like 99.9% sure that I'm going to survive it, I'm generally just not willing to do it. And but then you've got these folks who are out there just like, leaping up to the ledge and not even tied in. And I would normally be there to chastise them for not following the not following the safety procedures, right? It's just, my hope is that violent behavior, high risk behavior can be simulated to a very high fidelity as we move forward as a species, to keep to keep those elements of us happy. Like think about Star Trek with the holodeck. The holodeck really expresses what we're describing here.
Yeah.
If you guys know about the Klingons having to have this regular violent behavior to keep their sanity, so the only way they were able to stay on a crew with humans was to regularly go and murder people in virtual reality. And I think that there are elements of the human species that will, at least for the remainder of my lifetime, be part of our genome. And they're necessary traits in times of need, but they are not good traits for society in a normal state. And being able to alleviate the stress on those individuals that comes with having those personality and genetic traits is something that we need to keep in mind. There's basically 2 choices. We can breed or edit out those traits in the species, or we can tend to those in healthy ways. And generally speaking, people don't seem to like the idea of genetically editing the species on purpose. So that really only leaves us with one option that is considered okay, and that is to explore ways to simulate those behaviors and stuff in a safe environment like video games. And to me, video games are a really, really good outlet for those kind of frustrations. I've been seeing more doctors prescribing video games to the elderly as a way to keep themselves from losing their mental capacity and their dexterity. So, video games are now an actual prescription from medical doctors for the elderly to keep themselves from getting dementia. There's a lot of interesting things that we're finding about video games that are kind of the opposite of what what had been proclaimed by large organizations in the past. Even the World Health Organization flipped their opinion on video games in light of the current COVID crisis, as they had published something saying that it produced aberrant behavior or something like that, and it was a disease. And I will say there are people who are so addicted to video games that they do need help, but healthy inclusion of video games in your life is a way to socialize. It's a way to test your mind and keep it active. And I feel like individuals that play a lot of video games healthily are brighter, happier, and more balanced individuals than those who have no hobbies other than watching Netflix when they get home.
Hmm. I think that one of the problems is the labeling. I wish they'd stop calling it video games. I wish they would differentiate and label as such. Like a simulation is a simulation, and a game, this hyper addictive cancer stick is a game, right?
Well, gamification, even in real life, is something really important, right? Think about your development experience. If you gamify the experience, you will get better
But
results.
that's still just another term. That's just another label. It's almost a process of the human brain is gamification, or you're
Yeah,
addressing a part of the brain with gamification.
really. And then, but yeah, there are the games that are designed to basically latch on to that one part of the human psyche that's super addictive and feed into that loop and just suck as much time or money out of those individuals as possible. And then there are those games that are more open and allow folks to experience things however they want. And there are things that tell a story, right? The narrative games. That, generally speaking, the things that I find most engaging are the ones that allow me to solve puzzles and put me in a situation where I need to learn a skill or I need to practice something that I'm not otherwise really good at.
It should just be called puzzles then. You know that?
Yeah, but it's okay to call it games,
Well, the
and it's
problem is there's a stigma with calling things games.
there's always going to be a stigma
There's
about
always a
everything,
stigma. Yeah.
right? Like if you say you do puzzles, people are going to imagine you just sitting on your couch and doing word puzzles, and they're going to have negative thoughts about you for that because they have some association with their lazy grandpa who just sat and didn't do anything. He didn't even help with dishes. And I'm like, you don't even like keep in mind that like he probably bought that whole house you were in, but whatever, right? Like this, everything has a stigma. In my experience, I am going to offend people. It's going to happen, or I'm going to be representative of some group that you have some stigma with, right? Like I've got a little bit of steampunk stuff on right now. I'm wearing my steampunk hat on top of headphones because I haven't found good headphones that I can put behind my head, right? So it looks a little bit silly. I'm a streamer. Uh, there's a lot of stigma around streamers. I, I've mentioned a lot of video games I play, a lot of things I do. There's stigma around everything we do, right? You can't have a haircut without there being a stigma to it. So I think part of it is just accepting that it's called a video game, but you can call it a simulation or whatever, right? But whatever you choose to call it, you're now choosing to associate with a stigma for that. There's a stigma for simulations.
I just wish
And
that people wouldn't label it so broadly. It's because it creates like an aversion. Like, hey, what if this one simulation could cure depression? But people won't get into it because it's called a video game.
Yeah. I I think that people right now are being forced to actually face that reality a little more than they had before.
Yeah.
People, a lot of people are coming out of the woodworks who never had done anything more than maybe casually play on the Xbox or whatever. And suddenly they're like, let's give that a try. Let's install this game that's on sale. Let's put Steam on here and just like see what's there. And then you realize this huge variety that is available to you, right? But the reality is, if someone is able to have a good time playing football or watching football, I'm okay with that as long as they don't make me do it, right? And there's a stigma around being a video gamer to that audience, but it's because we think that we're at odds with each other. The reality is we're just not interested in each other's hobbies, and I think that's okay, right?
See, I don't think that video gaming should be considered a hobby though, because it's a treatment for mental disorder or disease.
It depends upon how you're using it,
Yeah.
right?
And the type of game that it is.
And there's a valid stigma for the person who is unable to take themselves out of the video game to deal with real life. That is a real problem that some individuals encounter. As someone who runs a large gaming group, a big part of making it a chill gaming group and pushing against this idea, you have to be the best, you have to achieve these things before everyone else, all those kind of things. Some of these things have a real adverse effect on your psyche. So there's healthy ways to play games and there's unhealthy ways to play games, just like there's healthy ways to and unhealthy ways to experience just about anything in life, right? Like actual real world rock climbing and hunting and fishing and stuff, those are all amazing experiences that I would encourage people to go out and have in real life. But if you don't do it safely, you will die. And it's okay for it to be dangerous to do in the wrong ways and still be a really good experience to have in life.
One of the D&D sessions I was looking at that you're having is 5.5 hours long. 5.5 hours. You stream that on Twitch.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they can be pretty long. The We do them every other week, and then we do like a big segment of playthrough there. And usually we do between 3 and 5 hours of gameplay on the role play.
And a big surprise for me was just the fact that everybody at the end kind of kept their composure. It doesn't look like you guys have been going at it for 5 hours. Pretty chill. Everyone was pretty much relaxed too.
It can feel like it sometimes though,
Yeah,
but
it
yeah,
must be. I wonder about that. Like, how do
I
you
try
survive that?
I try to do a round table at the end every time I do a role play session as well, to basically say, hey, uh, how did you feel about this session? How did you feel about this session? I try and do that with most of the video games I play multiplayer, just so that we get feedback not only from the audience but also from those who participated, to see what they liked and what they didn't like about the experience together, and to hopefully improve every time. And I think this is something I picked up from Scrum and Agile, is this concept of continuous improvement in everything we do, right?
Yep.
Every time,
Retrospective meeting.
yeah, every time we do something, my expectation, same thing with the night crew earlier today, right? I was doing a lot of discussion in our private messages about the feedback we've gotten on the last show and how we can improve our next show, because I think it's really important. I want to know what we did well, and to also know areas that we might be able to improve, especially ones that would be really easy to improve. And Dev, I definitely read your comment, and I was actually bringing that up
Yep.
specifically with your comment in mind about
Escapism.
people who use video games as a way to escape reality instead of dealing with reality, and that is the unhealthy way
I
to
disagree.
use games.
No,
But
I disagree. I think that's a good way to use games. I think escapism's okay.
as long as you have control over it yourself.
Well, what do we have control over in our lives?
So you can escape if you are actually using that escape to rejuvenate your mental health. But if it is actually causing you more stress and creating more problems
Of
in
course.
life,
But that's like an edge case. That doesn't have to happen, you know?
no, but like I definitely go into Star Citizen some days to escape from the stress of the day and to just enjoy the experience of being in space and flying my spaceship. But if there was something that I really needed to do today that I can't do tomorrow and I'm putting it off just because I needed to go escape, I may get more mental relief from actually tackling that problem and having the relief of it, right? Like, so for me, I I experienced sleeping out in the winter in a hammock underneath a tarp all winter this year while I was tending to my land out on the coast. So whenever the sun is out right now, I want to go and work on that cabin so that it has a roof over, because I know that if I delay it again like I did last year, I will be back in that circumstance again while I tend to the land. Or I'll have to leave it abandoned for an extended period of time and maybe lose progress I've made. Those are things that I physically need to tend to because they're on a timeline. But I also get a lot of relief from other stress by spending time in video games. But like I think it's possible to have negative results from the same experiences depending upon where you are in life. Two individuals can do the exact same things and it can have the opposite effect for them. And so it's it largely depends on your personality, your circumstance, and the reason and result that you're getting from the usage of the medium, no matter what it is. And I think the same thing from, like, if you are someone who drinks alcohol, personally, my belief is that as long as you're doing it in a healthy way and healthy amounts and that it is helping you, like, it's fine, right? But someone could do the same behaviors and not be able to control that behavior. And that suddenly becomes a problem. I think that each individual is reasonably able to do different activities, and depending upon those circumstances, it's going to be different for them, right? Like for you, escapism clearly seems to be very, very important. And my assumption is that you have found a good way to balance out tackling your personal and professional needs
Are you talking to
while
me when you say you, or
yeah,
are you talking to
you,
Devio?
yeah, you,
No, no, you couldn't be further from the truth.
right? But like, for us to hold that opinion, we need to be able to have that balanced approach ourselves.
No, I think that in the future everyone's gonna be like Devio. Everyone's gonna just go into dial into the matrix and whisk away to their fantasy. That's gonna be, and if everyone's doing it, what's the harm?
No, and yeah, like so that does bring up a good point. So like when you watch The Matrix, a lot of people see that as something horrible, and like for me, I'm like, that seems like a pretty chill life.
I mean, it's just another stage of life. You talk about alcoholism. Well, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, everyone's an alcoholic, or what we consider an alcoholic nowadays. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But they didn't think it any different. I mean, their religion basically supported it. It was healthier because it was healthier than drinking water.
yeah, unfortunately. But yeah,
Sorry.
so this idea that it's a problem to be in a video game, right? Like, oh, I can see that, right? It's just, if you have to be in the real world, then having a healthy relationship between your real world and your digital world is important. And some individuals are unable to do that without help. And that's, I don't want to just like dismiss that reality, because that would be uninformed, and it would be frankly dangerous for me to, as someone that a lot of people look up to say that it doesn't exist. Because the reality is some of my viewers are probably struggling with that, particularly right now, diving into video games as opposed to tackling real world issues that may be having in their relationships or in their life. But it's also okay to dive into that as a way to not have a panic attack or freak out. But I guess especially if you know me, know that I'm okay with you reaching out like privately if you ever do need advice. It's something that I've provided a lot of people over time. I'm old. All right, I got gray. I've had a lot of experience. I can't guarantee I'll be able to help you with your exact circumstance, but I do generally hope that I can give advice to point you in the right direction. And my opinion is that video games are not always the answer. And that's why I created a community that like allows people to walk away from even that community for extended periods of time to tackle real life issues with the like very strict rule that no one will be retributional about it, because at the end of the day it is selfish of me to say that I can decide whether or not you should be tending to something else in your life, uh, as opposed to making potions for us to support a raid in World of Warcraft.
Someone's gonna
Right,
make potions aren't gonna make themselves.
it's true. Right, but it's dangerous, like what we were talking about earlier in the show, right? Hardcore gaming groups will they'll kick you out because you said that you had a family emergency, right? Or that you had to go tend to your job for a month, right? You'll get kicked out. And it works for those groups. They're able to achieve things at a pretty high degree. Um, and like, you know, I could see like something like the Night Crew focusing more on people who like are very, very hardcore into certain things, as opposed to maybe these other gaming groups that we may participate with are focused on a different mentality. Uh, and that's okay. It's okay to have groups that are super hardcore, but personally, I tend to like to operate with groups that are more understanding of that work life and that reality, virtual reality balance, if you would.
Cool.
But yeah.
So you're doing pretty good on your stream, I'd say. How long you been streaming Star Citizen for now?
Since 3.2, that's when I started the Star Citizen streaming.
Okay.
And
So year and a half?
yeah,
Now?
about a year and a half. I've been streaming for about 2 years coming up on. So started streaming about 2 years ago, and Star Citizen I've been streaming for about 16 months, I think. 16 to 19 months. Yeah. And I just remember one of my early experiences with Buster the Destroyer, actually. It was me helping her with her audio setup. And so I'd like big shout out to her. I've been working with her for a really long time. She's one of the big reasons that I joined the Night Crew, actually, just because we've been working together on our streams for a long time. And she's been doing an amazing job. I've really stuck to my variety stream and keeping, you know, VR content in there every once in a while and everything, which does make it grow a little bit slower. But I feel like to me, there's a lot of value in knowing that I can switch to any game that we want to play as a community and not have a lot of toxicity come up. So it's been a little bit slower growth to say that I'm playing Star Citizen every Tuesday and other games throughout the week, because not everyone is cool with, you know, experiencing just the hanging out with me regardless of what game I'm playing. But also I think that like I've grown a lot as a content creator. There's a lot that goes into creating a stream and having a really good high quality setup, just like getting to the point where I have this really nice microphone, this really nice setup and everything. It's just been a continuous putting the money back from Twitch and investing additionally into just getting a setup. Like I never expected that I would have two big computers, one completely dedicated to streaming and the other completely dedicated to video gaming, right? It creates a lot of interesting situations that are usually worse than what you would normally encounter when you're just trying to stream. Like everyone's like, "Hey, use push to talk," and I'm like, "Oh, well, I can't play in that channel because my keyboard's shared between two computers, and Discord runs on the other one." Um, and so the yeah, the progress in growing the stream and everything has been really kicking off, particularly in the
Yeah,
last,
you've been doing
I'd say,
really
like
good.
4 or 5 months of really deciding that I'm truly going to be a full-time streamer, dedicated to it, and focusing more on growing the viewership. So getting better about my showmanship, getting better about audience engagement, and getting better about networking are really important. But also watching your own content, and if you have to turn it off, other people had to turn it off too. Um, that's my suggestion. If you
Yep.
can't bear to watch your own content, change it. If you want to grow,
Yeah.
uh, there may be some people who are going to stick with you no matter what, but my goal is to hit partner. And for me to do that, I have to push myself to the limit and keep on growing professionally as a streamer.
It does take a lot of work, doesn't it? It's nothing
It's
to shake your head at.
no, like I have to be a character.
Yep.
I have to be more than Joe, right? That's the real me. The real me makes cabins and does cool stuff like that. But my real Twitter profile has far, far fewer followers than my GandoraOlap profile. I'd built up the reputation of this character over such a period of time and put so much into it that literally I made the GandoraOlap Twitter handle, and within 3 days it had more followers than something I'd had for 7 years. It was honestly depressing, but it really taught me the power of having an avatar and the power of dedication to that avatar. Um, and so that's why, like, keeping my marketing and keeping my brand as GandoraOlap has been really important. Like, Gandora is actually a character I created for my first novel, Nemia Rising. And so if you read Nemia Rising episode 1, the first chapter actually like features this character in it, and I've obviously through streaming as Gandora for coming up on 2 years now, I've developed the character further, uh, as it has to, it has to fit a fair number of genres, and I have to be comfortable playing them all the time. The original Gandora is slightly more lecherous than me, we'll just say. Uh, but the uh, the reality is, like, putting all this in, going and doing these shows, joining groups like the Night Crew, and really like embracing this community of Star Citizen and streamers as a whole has had a huge positive impact on my ability to grow as a creator and to, improve my audience reach and hopefully have a positive impact on a lot more people's lives. And I know that personally, I have a lot of room to grow still. And just like I offered in the past, if you guys ever have suggestions on how I can continue to improve, a big part of the reason that I've been able to get to the point I am today is all of the people who subscribe to my show have an exclusive private chat channel in the Super Friends Discord where they are able to discuss changes that they want to see to the content and to decide, what kind of games we're going to be playing on our non-Star Citizen days and what kind of events we should do. But giving feedback on ideas on the layout and stuff like that. I like to keep it really collaborative. I think it is partly due to my software background and my agile background. This idea that like nothing can ever be perfect, so there's always room for improvement. Um, it's the QA in me. What can I say? And I think that's had a really big impact on my ability to push out of my normal boundaries, right?
Well, I'm very thankful that you decided to participate with the night crew because, I mean, me personally, I've grown quite a bit just from learning from you. You've taught me quite a bit. So thank you for doing all that because you don't need to. I look at you and I'm like, you honestly, this is an optional thing. If anything, we're kind of privileged to have you here. So thanks for doing everything you do.
And
Um,
absolutely. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to connect with a group that's dedicated around creating content. Um, there's a lot for me to learn from you guys, and I'm an old fart who's done a lot of things. So hopefully I can help you guys in some other areas too. But like people who've dedicated themselves to building an audience and to especially creating these communities on Twitch, like a lot of people look at it and say, whatever, I could do that, but whatever. It is
they
hard
never
work.
do.
It is hard,
Yeah.
hard work. Doing this pretty much full time for 2 years, and you get these, like, the growth is so slow that it's a difficult experience to keep on pushing and keep on pushing. To anyone out there who has put so much work into it, like, props to you. You guys should really be proud, and you should not be ashamed of what you've achieved. Um, I know there's a lot of stigma around being a streamer, right? And like for me, I get a lot of value and mental health value and meaning from being able to interact with everyone the way I do. So no matter what size the audience I have is, the fact that I know that I can turn any video game on and push the live button and be able to spend time with you guys has a lot of meaning. And you guys from the night crew accepting me into the group and taking the feedback that I've given and knowing that we're going to be able to collaborate together to keep on growing each other's content and to work together like this has a lot of meaning to me. Um, you guys are the first group that I've ever officially joined as, like, this is the first team I've joined on Twitch, and so I didn't make that decision lightly, and I hope that you guys know that that means that I respect each of you all a lot.
I know that. I looked at the numbers, man. I know you. It's thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you know what? The first time I saw like you came across my radar actually was Ravi sent me a random message one day being like, "Hey, check out this guy," and it was a clip of you in a Kraken on your stream.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Gotta
How
gotta
did how did you do that, by the way?
so I am part of the offline modding community for Star Citizen. So there's a community of people who know how to take the game, and we've reversed engineered it in offline mode so that we can pull assets out of the different versions of the game that we have. So uh, the game has a lot of spaceships in its files that just aren't exposed. And so it's possible to run the game in offline mode and create the XML files the same way the developers do to actually propagate those ships so you can actually fly them. So in offline mode, without it connected to the internet, anything like that, I'm able to safely test out different elements. I can even introduce new elements into the game in that mode if I was better with Blender, but I'm not. So other people tend to do the modeling. I thought I was going to be a video game model rigger and stuff back when I was a younger boy, but I realized quickly that just like a lot of people look at streamers and say, "Oh, that'd be easy. I could totally do that." When you try and go and do it, it's a lot of work.
Hmm.
So yeah, the idea with pulling out the Kraken is that all of the outer shell was created and put into the files when they went to create the demo video for the Kraken. And as someone who purchased the Kraken, The moment I saw that it was available, I really, really wanted to know if I had spent that much money unwisely. So I wanted to particularly understand what kind of operations and missions I'd be able to do with the ship. So seeing it at scale meant a lot to me because I was able to tie it to what I did was I tied it to a Gladius with the help of folks in the modding community. And then what you do is you fly the Gladius and you have the outer shell of the Kraken attached to it. That way you have the model inside the verse itself. And then I could take things like the Hammerhead or the Vanguard and test to see where the landing pads would fit on those vessels. And that has a lot of value to me as someone who wants to know how I'll be able to use that ship.
Was it a wise decision?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that as someone who runs a large org focused around PvE content, that unlike, maybe if I really wanted to be in a lot of high combat with other players, maybe a javelin would make more sense, but I can't really necessarily afford that. Um, the reality was the ability to say I have a mobile base that's going to allow me to move even more ships than a javelin had more value to me because of the fact that, like, even just the number of ships that I have, I would need a Kraken to move them. So I felt like it was the natural capital that was uh, a good fit for my personal fleet, and that I would actually be able to serve some extra value for those who want to play with me on stream and in my org. It'll allow us to take it out into the black, have a bunch of moles or prospectors on it, or have a bunch of vultures, have some medical ships on it. It's the ability to take medium and small ships in a fairly large quantity means that I can kit it out to basically do whatever I want by the complement of ships that are riding on top of it. And it is, like, for me, the biggest trade ship I'll probably ever bother with. I'm not big on trade personally, so just knowing how important trade is for making end game money, I knew that I needed to have something. And with how much I have invested in the game, it just made sense to say, okay, let's at least have a big trade ship, but my focus really is using it as a base of operations for big events.
And I wanted to know, like, because you had wondered if it was a wise idea or not. Was it the privateer version or is it the regular one?
Just regular.
Regular one.
I
No privateer.
No. um I can always add store modules later. The reality is it's a modular ship. So uh, looking at it, the chances are that modules aren't going to be terribly horribly difficult to acquire down the line. So my thought was just having a baseline, just like when I bought an Endeavor, I didn't buy the Endeavor Master set because the consumables for the Endeavor are likely to not appreciate in value, whereas the ship itself is guaranteed to appreciate
It's true.
value. And so I looked at those modules, add-on pieces, as something that, like, ultimately I need something to do in the game. The reason I don't own a 600i or an 890 jump is I have decided that any of those, like, super classy ships are end game ships for me. So even if I want one, I have not allowed myself to purchase anything that's too pretty because I want those to be things I earn in game. Uh, as a way to be like, cool, look, I managed to do enough trade to buy an 890 jump, right? Like, those are going to be in-game goals for myself. And I think that is important. If I'm putting this much into the game, I don't want to actually have nothing to do once I get in. So that's where I'm looking at, right? Like, I will have the upgrade kind of playthrough on all of the ships that I have, right? I'm gonna go buy the components, get them kitted out, and that's always a fun gameplay loop for me, upgrading spaceships. But once those are upgraded, then the next logical step is like, cool, let's get a ship that has a different role. So one of the roles I don't have almost, I don't think I have any of, is like passenger transport, right? So that may be one of the first types of ships that I get once that playthrough comes through using in-game currency.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, but I won't spend real money on a spaceship that I don't personally want to fly.
Gotcha.
So that's basically been my rule. If it's not a ship I would love to fly myself often, then it's not worth it for me to buy it. I'd rather one of my org mates or my streamer friends have that, right? Like you have the 890 jump. I don't want to take away the value of you having an 890 jump. I want to include you when I want an 890 jump, right? I want to say, hey, Seg, I really need an 890 jump for my show next Tuesday. Can we work it out together?
I'd be so happy if you did that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that
I
I can
feel so
highlight
special.
you. Right. And I think that's awesome, right? Like, because people who put that much into the game, in a lot of ways, they're wanting to provide value to the game and to other members of
That's
the
true.
game,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so the saddest thing is to see someone totally alone on a capital ship, not not having the skill or ability to bring people in to play with them. So as someone who's like an A type who really likes to gather large groups and coordinate stuff, I like to try and highlight the members of my communities that have those larger ships but need help coordinating events, um, by including them in those kind of things. Uh, the difficult part with certain ships is like if you need them on a pretty regular basis, you need to have someone who's really reliable to participate if you're not going to get it yourself. And that's like with the mole. I had to just eventually break down and say, I need a mole because it's like the only way to make money other than trade that I'm willing to do. And so I ended up melting a bunch of my snub noses that I wasn't really using and upgrading the Santokia, which only gets me a Cartual right now, to a mole, right? But it was a hard decision. I held on to that Cartual for like a year, just hoping that, okay, it was going to get better. But personally, I'm a little concerned that having a superiority fighter, no matter how fast it is, that opens up like a giant flower with the largest radar cross section in the whole game of its class is probably just never going to make for a great superiority fighter. Um, it's a hard one for me though, because I really love fast ships, right? So having the most nimble ship, but also one of the easiest ships to hit was the concern. So,
we haven't talked about anything Star Citizen this show. I don't know. I mean, there's really not that much to talk about. So I don't. Is there anything you wanted to?
well, we've talked a lot about Star Citizen. What
Well,
kind of
I just mean about like the Star Citizen Live and ISC or any of that stuff, roadmap.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I guess I just ran a whole show last night and I'm about to run another one on it too, right?
I see.
Like, so for the current state of Star Citizen, I have a couple. There's obviously a big update. They just did a partial wipe. So some of you guys went from everything was fine to you lost everything. And I'm really sorry that happened to you guys. I do understand that they found a significant issue in the database and they had to fix it. I think it was there before, and it was a reason that we were getting progressive performance decrease. So it may not have been related to 3.9 getting released too early, but I am definitely of the opinion that everyone I talked to said it was too early for us to release 3.9 from PTU. I wanted them to open it up to us as first wave, second wave, and all backers, but that doesn't mean you have to release it when it's not ready to live, right? There's a difference between saying more people can test it and saying Now we need to release it. And I think that a mistake was made for sure releasing it so quickly, because there are definitely balance issues and major bugs that I worry will lead to further requirements of those type of things like character resets and stuff, right? Because I've encountered several circumstances where the only way to deal with it was a character reset while I was in the PTU.
Right. Yep.
And if those things are still there and have not been fixed, that is a very bad experience for individuals who may want to dive into particularly the criminal stuff. There was a couple circumstances, particularly I think the way that you might be able to replicate it would be to set your spawn point to a medical bed and then have that ship not there after you've served your sentence in prison. And then it'll default to the prison as your spawn point instead of that last known spawn point, because you were set to be spawning in a ship that no longer exists. So I don't know if they fixed that, and I'm too afraid to actually replicate it because of the fact that I would have to straight reset my account.
Right.
And whereas in the PTU, I would have happily reset my account every day until they had it fixed. And so that's the reason I feel like keeping a development environment up on a regular basis is a really good idea. I'm actually of the mindset that the PTU should run continuously.
Yeah.
And that they should always just be pushing their latest branch for the next patch at all times.
We used to have that in Ultima. We used to have a test server. Anyone could access it, but it would just be frequently reset. That was the problem.
Yeah. I think that that would be amazing. It would also be a way to really deal with a lot of the PR issues. I think that the only reason that they would resist against it really is marketing.
Yeah.
Because marketing really, really heavily relies on these release cycles and the hype build from it.
Yeah.
I think we can still build hype while allowing testing early. And the reality is, it's almost unprecedented the number of people who are willing to test for free for this company. So being able to leverage a huge player base of people testing in a test environment on a regular basis, I feel like it would save them a lot of money if they just did it regularly. And I think it would get rid of a lot of the animosity if it was just a normal thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Right.
Yep. Get rid of the whole
So
avocado thing and just make it
yeah,
a test server.
Evocati shouldn't really be a thing.
Yeah.
They could have some special, like a special group, but the reality is that group is going to leak no matter what.
Yeah.
So
100%.
if you want to restrict the number of people, just restrict the number of people that are allowed, and say, hey, you'll get kicked out of this phase 0, and you say phase 0 has nothing to do whether or not you're a subscriber or whatever. It could be the same group that's currently in Evocati, but don't make it all secret squirrel. You know they're gonna leak, but they're purposely using it as a way to take advantage of a psychological principle that happens when you get information you know you're not supposed to get. You get more excited about it. And so I feel like Evocati's primary purpose is marketing, and I think it's a large part of the reason that there's animosity between CIG and a lot of backers.
Yeah, that's true. That's what the common thing. Whenever people quit, I hear that they're just like incompatible with their marketing campaigns at CIG.
Yeah. And like, I'm okay with giving a lot of money for spaceships. I'm still going to buy spaceships even if I know what's coming up next. Clearly, I play every single patch that comes out, and I still buy spaceships when I do have the money to do it. And I think that it would go a long way to help mend the relationship between the players and the company. If in the long run we can move towards that, it's also going to help alleviate some of the fluctuation you get on feedback, because you're going to get a lot more consistent feedback and a lot more consistent testing by doing that. And you're going to get a lot more early notice on issues. Um, and now obviously you can still have things that are being developed privately before you release them to that. So you essentially end up with a 3 stage where you have your internal testing, then you have your external testing branch, and then you have your release branch, right? And that's basically what they already have. So it's not going to take a lot of work to leverage that. I I just think that if they had at that early stage brought out the PTU, they would have had more valuable input. But also, like, I'm kind of butthurt that I didn't get to play with the Idris,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I
me
didn't get
too,
to fight the
actually.
Idris. I didn't get a vote as to whether or not that content was really not ready.
They just posted on the avocado forums, right? And it just if you were there, you got to participate in it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
like
usually play avocado in the weekend, late at night. It's when nobody else is doing it.
for me, it's just really sad that I didn't get to experience that.
Yeah.
That's a significant event. I didn't get to weigh in on whether or not they were making a good call there. I would have personally been okay. Like, what I heard was essentially the reason they canned it was they couldn't get it to consistently spawn.
Interesting. Hmm.
And so from my perspective, you could just be like, there's a random chance whether or not it'll spawn. Even if it's a bug, you can totally sell that.
True. Seems like
Right?
fake news.
Yeah, like I'm of the mindset that as backers, particularly very, active players and backers, it's going to create a, a negative experience if we don't get to at least weigh in on those kind of decisions.
Yep.
And like I've almost got tears in my eyes for the fact that I didn't get to like, I'm no joke, I am like almost crying because I didn't get to blow up that Idris. That's how important that event was to me. Like I was very, very emotionally invested in the excitement of blowing up the Idris. And I'm one of the few people who's actually flown an Idris because of my ability to mod the game. I've blown up the Idris, but like the idea of actually having an event where I would need to coordinate that many of my members to be in fighters and to actually show them here's a reason to have a fully manned hammerhead, right? Like other than just trolling the whole server, right? Like and so really this kind of content that is more raid level and really pushes our personal limits is the stuff that I'm very excited for. The reason I'm willing to buy a capital size ship is, to me, it's an entire game map that I own, right? These capital ships are bigger than a lot of FPS maps that we experience in games like Call of Duty and stuff. So that's why it has so much value to me. And the idea of being able to have this emergent gameplay of coordinating large groups of players similar to what you experience in other MMOs is really important to me in the long-term future of this game. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not even an avocado. You're apparently an avocado that missed out on it.
Oh, you're not an avocado? How did you get to play with it then? Or how did you even find out about it?
What?
On Reddit?
Oh no, like I collect leaks like
Oh,
from
I see.
everywhere. And that's the thing. I often know more than other
Oh,
Evocadis
definitely. There.
as an individual who's just very interested.
Yeah.
I won't sign that contract.
Oh, I see.
Even if they were to give it to me, I would be very unlikely to sign a contract that would say I wouldn't share something I found. Because the reality is, running a group that doesn't believe in secrets like that, it's incompatible with me. Running a stream where I'm going to happily tell you the answer if I know it, it's incompatible with that kind of NDA. I I mean, one of the big reasons I got out of the military was I was just tired of everything I did being a secret.
Yeah.
The only thing I could talk about was like me being annoyed with a coworker, and then you start to forget how awesome life is. You forget how awesome a job you have in the military when all you can talk about is how like, Lieutenant Dan was a real asshole today. Right.
Yeah.
And that's so for me, as someone who, always wants to know a little bit more, and I'm okay with finding things from leaks or from digging into files and just like trying to figure that kind of stuff out. It's kind of an exciting little extra challenge, right? I know it would get a little bit more boring if it was all open and just given to me, but I think that that would be more fair and better for the community overall. Like, it's basically become a separate little game for the people who are super into the game to try and get information first.
It's true, but like not everybody's like that, you know. But there is a lot of that.
There's some people who don't like spoilers, and that's fine. But I'm I'm okay with spoilers. I run a spoiler friendly community. I if it's a storyline, I consider it a spoiler. But the idea that a spaceship itself is a spoiler, I don't quite understand it personally. I can see the perspective, but the idea that knowing what the inside of the Idris looks like, we've already seen tons of videos
That's
from
true.
CIG of
Yep.
it, right? Like it's
They were
complete.
so butthurt by that leak, by the way. That was the most butthurt I've ever seen CIG. I was laughing so hard at the whole thing. It was great. The community was so happy about it too. It was like, "Thank you,
I know,
hackers."
right? Like it's just like, yeah, me showing off the Idris and the Kraken and all that stuff. You're gonna be all butthurt about it, but like just share it.
Yeah,
You're already showing it in videos. And the reality is, what is a leak is the story that you're trying to tell. So if your story in Squadron 42 isn't strong enough to hold up against the idea that basically if you know the layout of the ship, it's going to be ruined for you. That's You must have a really shallow story,
that's
guys,
true. Yep.
right? Like your story should completely blow that ship out of the water because it's just a spaceship. It's just a bunch of rooms with a hangar inside of it that has a hull, which hopefully protects it from a couple size 10 torpedoes, right? And that's it. That's what that is. It's a spaceship, it's a backdrop for content. The same way it'll be used in the verse when you give it to the people who paid good money for it. Now, I understand one of the big real reasons that they're holding off is they have not fully finished migrating it from the old style development to actually having it all proper containers and objectified and all that stuff. They're getting it ready for iCache and stuff like that, where we're going to actually put suits in there. We're going to have our weapons on the weapon racks and do all these things that didn't exist when they first created it, right? Because they had to create the shell of this ship in order to do all the demos of the video game Squadron 42 for the people who put a bunch of money into those elements. And for Chris Roberts to keep in mind and all of the people who are actually developing it. I think that the sensitivity over leaks or spoilers applying to things that are not story related is too much. I think that there's a whole group of people who are going to be very happy just to be able to fly the ship, experience the ship, and run their own stories in it.
That's
They're
right.
going to make their own videos. They're going to make their own, like, they'll have their characters walking through, they'll role play it, and they'll do amazing things in it. And then my hope is with the dedicated tools and everything that they'll do an even more amazing job creating the experience that we have when they're Squadron 42. So nothing's spoiled. It's really just more understanding of how glorious it's going to be. Like, look at the scale of the 890 jump. It's so much more than an Aurora, right? Like, it's what, 66 rooms,
What? Yeah, something like that. Boy, that's a
right?
long time ago. Yeah, something
Right?
like
Like,
that.
think about it. Like, but it's like if they had the 890 jump in Squadron 42 and they had actual characters walking around and talking to you and like tending to the bar on that ship, and maybe they had like a gangster scene where they were like shooting up the place and you had to hide and like yeah, it's on the same ship, but me being on that ship before certainly didn't spoil that, right? Like the 890 jump mission in game right now. I had been on the 890 jump a bunch of times, but going in and actually having NPCs hiding behind the tables and shooting at me in a dark room and closing off different doors at unexpected times and locking me into sections, that was a completely different experience. And that is what they have to look at when you're saying whether or not you're spoiling something. If you're not adding to the existing baseline of a setting, then that's more of a worry than whether or not you're spoiling it. Right? Like the mountains behind you in a really cool scene add a lot of majesty and awe to the experience. And some individuals will prefer to say, hey, I don't want to go to Pyro until I play the single player experience because I don't want to spoil that for myself. But they're not going to go in game either. They'll just say, cool, I know that that's a part of the experience I really want. Like I have players who backed a long time ago in Star Citizen, and they will not play until it's done, until it's released in beta or in 1.0, like actual release. They won't play.
Yep.
And
Met
those
a
are the
few
type
people
of
like that.
people who don't want spoilers. So they won't watch my streams of it. They won't do any of that because they want to experience the game the way it's intended to be experienced at the end. And those individuals will self filter. And, and a couple of them may bitch that they saw something they shouldn't have seen, but like these are the squeaky wheels and not the average individuals that actually back the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least my interpretation. I don't
Yep,
know what you
that's how
guys
I look
think
at it.
on Twitch, but I definitely feel that to be the case. Or I guess on YouTube too. This is going to be here later, and I'm going to have to track down all these comments that we get.
Lols.
Um, I tell you what, the difference between Twitch viewers and YouTube is significant.
Yeah.
I think largely, I feel like YouTube viewers have a lot more feeling of anonymity, and so they will say stuff that is way meaner. Like I
Yeah.
totally expect a bunch of comments about how stupid this hat is. Like
I hope so. Honestly,
it
like
always comes up.
the comments have been all positive so far. So we must be doing something
Yeah,
wrong. We
I
must
don't
have
know.
broken
Well,
YouTube.
okay, so there was one time, like when I first wore this particular hat on the captain's table. Okay,
Yeah.
I did this on accident before, and I wore it upside down. Let me show you.
The
I wore
glasses.
it like
Oh,
this
okay. It
the
must
whole
be
time,
uncomfortable. That's
and
cool. You look like Sid from Final Fantasy.
yeah, and it was like digging into the bridge of my
Yeah.
nose the whole time, and I had no idea why. And like after the show, I pulled it off, and I had like this big divot, and I was just like, "What?" And then yeah, people were like, "He was wearing it upside down." I was like, "Okay, yeah, it was totally valid, totally valid." Uh, but yeah,
I
oh
okay, so like just to wrap this thing up then,
yeah,
I'd like
because we
to
clearly could talk forever.
yeah, I'd like to know what you're gonna do more with the night crew or what you have planned for the night crew. If
So
you can.
so personally, since I am running every other show right
Hey
now,
man, you're in charge.
I want to see us do more things to focus on the community that we have. I I want to make sure that we are feeling more like a team. I would like to work together with members of the team who even aren't necessarily able to participate in that show that week. I was thinking of maybe we could do a schedule of like, hey, who's doing fundraisers this week? Who's got big events this week? And like actually highlight those. I I feel like there's a big opportunity for us to grow our unity as a group and to really help each other more actively. Um, so my goal is to take it. First of all, we've got the NC on SC show and our other shows. A lot of our content focuses a ton on Star Citizen. And we're all kind of like linked by the glue that we play Star Citizen, we love Star Citizen. But as you will find with most people who are full-time streamers and stream Star Citizen, they mix in other games. And the reality is some of us have to take breaks from Star Citizen for our sanity sometimes. but also like we're individuals, we're rounded, we may want to experience other things, and I think that that's okay. So from my perspective, I think we'll do best as a team if we can focus more on each other and how to help each other than purely on one game. I think that it's great that we have it as a foundation and a pillar, but my goal is to make sure that as I'm starting to step up and run things more, that I'm helping other individuals on the team as much as I can and helping to develop more of a mentality of more co-streams, more co-productions like this podcast, and more experiences that we can have together to help grow our audiences and get the word out about all of the awesome content creators that we have on the team. And you know, fundamentally that's why I'm willing to volunteer to do the extra activities, and I'm passionate about pushing in that way. And so my hope is that that will be in line with the vision for most of the members of the group, and that we'll be able to help each other more than what we've seen in the past. I've seen a lot of working together, but I want to see more of it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that that's where I would like to push the content of the group, to say, hey, yeah, like we had a lot of cool topics that we covered here. It was around Star Citizen in a lot of places, but it was okay that we took moments to talk about things that had more depth or were tied to other parts of our lives than just that one game. And I think that's what I'd like us to bring to the content that we're putting together. That it's okay if you wanted me to play Call of Duty with you. Uh, and I'm not really a good FPS player, but like if you need someone on your crew, and or you just want to like do a co-stream where you watch me struggle with that game, I would have fun with that. And if it's going to help you with your content for me to do something outside of my comfort zone, that I would enjoy the experience of being able to help you in some way as your teammate.
Cool.
What would you like to see moving forward with the group? What are some things that you personally would like to change or improve upon from your experience in the group? How long have you been in the night group, by the way?
I've always been in the night crew. It was like Penguin and I and a couple other guys who started it out, but the
Okay,
other guys are not really here so much anymore. So it's just Penguin and I. Um,
gotcha.
but I've always kind of been like an outlier a little bit because I've always kind of wanted to do my own. Well, like I participate in the group discussion, but I don't do any of the FPS stuff, so I don't do that. But like I was on the talk show originally so much that nobody else was getting onto it. So it's like, okay, I need to not do it so much anymore. So that's why I kind of did this show. It's because like I started getting all these I'm a strong networker, I guess, and I get all these contacts within the community. So I'm like, I'm just going to talk to cool people in the community instead because I'd like to do that.
No, that makes sense, and it's a good way to still be interacting with each other and helping each other while also helping the team and the night crew itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like, I really want to highlight the extraordinary people in the community because, like, if you the last episode we did with Mufasa, I mean, he played an instrument within the Star Citizen soundtrack. Like, that is so cool. Nobody knows
That is
about
cool.
that. I wish more people knew. But I don't know. I'd say we could wrap that up there, though. Thank you. Did you
Yeah.
have any icing on the cake that we might have missed?
No, I just think we're going to achieve a lot together, and I'm really glad that you had me here and that we were able to spend time together tonight. So, and everyone who is here participating live on Twitch, thank you so much. Be sure to follow the night crew, follow Sigelian, follow myself, GandoraOlap, at twitch.tv, and don't forget that if you want to get the cabin updates, you got to follow me on Twitter. It's twitter.com/GandoraOlap as well.
I'll be
But
sure
yeah,
to link that in the YouTube
yeah,
description for sure.
and the whole night crew so far, everyone I've met on it, everyone I've spent time with, they're awesome, amazing, very different people, and you'll be able to get great experiences by spending time with everyone there. So don't be a stranger. Check us out, and thank you all for the support and for coming and spending your quarantine with us. So it really means a lot to everyone who streams to spend time even with just one of you. So if you ever feel like you being there is unimportant, you're wrong. It really does mean a lot, especially those who choose to participate. Um, as someone who's been in streams with 0 viewers when I was first starting, you have no idea the emotional impact you can have on streamers by coming in and just saying hi and saying that you like what they're doing, or even giving a constructive criticism. But that does depend upon the streamer whether or not you'll get a good
That's true.
reception there.
That's true.
You might find yourself banned real
Yeah.
quick in some shows. Well, anyways, thanks again. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a fabulous evening, afternoon, or morning.
And thank you, GandoraOlap, for spending your time with me this evening and having a good chat. And to everybody else watching, next week we're going to be featuring Marcus Mover on the Late Night Crew Show from Operation Pitchfork. So stay
Very
tuned until
nice.
then. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks so much.